so that we're live and alive on all of the platforms. And I feel like we're about ready to go. Wait, use TikTok, not Tiki-Talkie, or not TikTok. I was posting on TikTok the other day. It just sounds like a boomer way to say it, or like, but I don't know why boomers would say TikTok, right? It's like they would just know it. TikTok is like, right, just the way for. All right, so let's get into what we're doing today. But I gotta press this button. I gotta press this button, and then go back here for this button. Let's hope that it works. All right, so we're gonna try this one more time. I feel like I could have spent a little more time on my hair today. I don't know. I don't know, chat. Maybe I should have just come to stream later. I don't know. Let's get going. Let's try that again. All right, here we go. Okay, so I feel like we got to start off with breaking points. Oh my god, I gotta go find this. I gotta go find this. So, yeah, we're talking about something that Biden did recently that could have been very helpful to Kamala Harris's campaign. But because of the way that he did it,
the reporter who's
is actually senselessly harmful. Immensely harmful, because the worst thing that you can do to people who have been waiting for the Biden administration to do something, or the Harris administration to say something about what's going on in Gaza, about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, the worst thing that you can do is give like a symbol, a sign that sounds like you care, that sounds like you're going to do something, that sounds like something's going to change, and then it doesn't fucking change, right? And that is exactly what Biden has done. He has he has threatened an arms embargo. Sounds good. Sounds good. That's what we want. That's what we want. In 30 days. In other words, after the fucking election, right? Supposedly, his line in the sand now is that if Israel does not allow humanitarian aid into Gaza within the next 30 days, so by like the 15th of October, right after, sorry, November, after the election is over, then he is going to maybe think about doing an arms embargo, supposedly, right? He's drawn red lines in the sand before. Israel's walked all over them. He's done nothing. He's done nothing. So yeah, this is a really strange thing for him to do. Now, obviously, on the other side, you know, you don't want this like weird like calculus where it seems like he's only doing it like for the election, where it seems like, you know, that it's specifically, you know, to, you know, aid in the election of Kamala Harris. But it's just, it's so weird that he would do it in such a specific way that basically enables Netanyahu to keep doing what it seems like he's doing, which is trying to get Trump elected, right? And I just don't understand why Biden would do it this way unless he really is still mad about people pushing him out of the nomination. So it lends credence to that weird Trump conspiracy theory that when Biden put on the Trump hat, he was trying to say something. I was like, yeah, dream on. But I don't know. I don't know now. Let's see what Ryan Grimm has got to say about it.
Been breaking basically all of the news from either the White House or out of the Knesset or out of Netanyahu's camp, Barak Ravid, over at Axios, is the receptacle for all the leaks from both sides, has a news story that is kind of reshaping the politics of Palestine. We put his piece up here. So basically what happened is over the weekend, the U.S. finally sent a sternly worded letter to Israel, which then it appears quite clearly that Israel then leaked to Barak Ravid. I want to read some of this just so people can get a flavor for it.
So do you see how this is working? The Biden administration sends this letter. It says 30 days to improve the humanitarian situation in Gaza or face consequences of military aid. That's a typo, obviously. Military aid to Israel being embargoed, and it's such a weak. It's too little, too late, right? This should have happened a long time ago, because apparently for like a month now, Israel has not allowed any aid into northern Gaza.
Right, the humanitarian situation for over 2 million civilians in Gaza is increasingly dire. This is supposed to be a private letter. Despite the July transition.
But yeah, so obviously Israel releases this to try to, I mean, in their mind, they're thinking, oh yeah, this is going to hurt Kamala's campaign. We'll be like, oh yeah, look at this. Biden said that he stands with Israel, but he's threatening a military embargo. Oh no, Mr. Biden, you would let us go without military aid to allow the evil terrorists to harm Israel. And what they don't seem to get is that the majority of American voters are actually on board with exactly that. They're on board with cutting off aid contingent actually on something like a ceasefire. Even Republican voters want this, want this to be over with, right? Even Republican voters want this to be over with. So I don't know what, they think they're doing. They think they're like, hurting the Harris campaign by releasing this. If anything, this would be a positive thing, except for the fact that it is 30 days. So here's the deal, right? If this was a real thing of like, hey, Israel's in line to get their aid cut off if they don't do XYZ, that would actually be a positive story for the Democrats. That would maybe possibly change some people's minds, even though, like I said, it's too little too late. And, what we really want is a ceasefire. And it's questionable if at this point, like the Biden administration even has the leverage on Israel to demand that kind of a ceasefire. But it's something. And if it weren't contention on, if it didn't give this like 30-day grace period, it would mean something. But because that's how it is, it's a story that's like, and this is the classic problem with Democrats. They've got one foot on one side, one foot on the other side, and they don't realize that if they want to succeed, they need to make a choice. And generally that choice that's going to be positive for them is standing up to the Republicans. But instead they want to kind of be like, well, we're kind of, we care about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, but not really that much. So it's just
from combat operations to
it's more of the same.
Counterterrorism operations in the Gaza Strip. Multiple evacuation orders have forced 1.7 million people into a narrow coastal zone from Mawasi to Deir el-Balah. Extreme overcrowding has put these civilians at high risk of lethal contagion. Humanitarian implementers report they are unable to meet essential survival needs of aid-dependent civilians. Trucks carrying humanitarian commodities, including perishable goods funded by the United States, are delayed at crossing platforms. I would encourage people to go and read this entire letter. It reads like some type of left-wing screed that you would find me penning somewhere. But it is just fact after fact after fact that says that, and it says that September was the worst month.
They're a little slow talking, right? Let's go to 1.5.
A year ago for humanitarian aid getting in. And we also know.
Is everybody good with that?
Worse than September. Like the situation is completely out of control. And they highlight the plight of 400,000 people. So you're talking 1.7 million people tucked into this little tiny enclave. They highlight the plight of 400,000 people in North Gaza that the IDF is ordering to leave North Gaza or be considered combatants, and has completely cut off from water and humanitarian aid and starving them to death. And the U.S. is saying, you can't do this. Like, there is no military justification for this. And these 400,000 people, most of them are refusing to leave. First of all, we have some reporting on this.
If it's facts, why is he calling it a screed? Good question, actually, Sassy. Let me try to offer an answer. Ryan Grimm is a lefty on one of these shows where their formula is bring on a right wing or bring on a lefty. So there's like a little bit of self-hate in this. I with Ryan Grimm, I'm assuming it's, you know, not serious, but it's a way to kind of be like, well, you know, that's like a lefty screed, like what I would write, like, you know, oh wow, he's sounding like me here. But you're at the same time, you're sort of marginalizing your own viewpoint. You're sort of reinforcing the fact that lefty politics are not taken seriously, are like thought of as a pipe dream. And, you know, when it's something like, I don't know, getting humanitarian aid to people who are starving, that shouldn't be a marginal viewpoint. And it's not a marginal viewpoint. Like I said before, it's something where actually all sides agree, right? This Israel thing is not actually the way that the Democrats are handling it is like they're disarming a bomb or something. And it's not really that complicated. Like they're living with a mentality of that being seen as supporting Israel is like a prerequisite to being taken seriously as a political actor, right? And that's not how things are anymore. Things have changed, and the Democrats are so slow, so incredibly slow to recognize that there is actually a benefit for them in standing up to Israel, in standing up particularly to Netanyahu. Like, right, if I was advising a Democrat, if I was advising the Harris campaign, understanding that they're not going to take the principled stand that I would like to see them take, I would advise them to separate Netanyahu and Israel, right? To use Netanyahu as the boogeyman and to get confrontational with him. But then, you know, if you want to do your whole thing where you're like, oh, but we support Israel, you'd be like, yeah, we support Israel, the country. We don't support the ultra right-wing government that is driving, you know, the Middle East and the world into an ever escalating conflict. We don't support that, right? That would be a perfectly pragmatic place to come down. But yeah, they're not even there yet. They're not even there yet. They're not even really riding the fence. They're still, yeah. But so that's why you get this thing from Ryan Grimm was like, wow, that's sounding pretty left wing there, right? Because that is something that you don't get except for from the far left on maybe, you know, a show like Majority Report and the far left, like they're not actually that far left, right? Trump is calling people like Sam Cedar and Ryan Grimm leftists, threatening to use the military against the leftists and Marxists. And I'm looking at people that are, yeah, I mean, you're progressive, you're on the left. I don't know, you know, you haven't really planted your flag in anti-capitalism or anything like that. And you're not exactly, you know, talking Marxism.
It drops like people who do try to leave are then shot at, many of them killed. But many others are saying we're not leaving because we have been through this rodeo. We do not believe that there is anywhere else in Gaza to go that is safe. So we're stuck here. This is part of, and we can put up this next tweet, which is kind of a summary from the Israeli perspective of what's been going on lately. So this letter comes at the same time, and so if you're listening to this, this is somebody who's doing a rundown. It says a rundown of kind of the international pressure Israel is under. One, Italian Prime Minister. It says that they're no longer supplying Israel with any weapons. Germany is refusing to supply weapons since March 2024.
That is so fucked up. That is so fucked up. We're talking about Maloney there with Italy, right? That is a right-wing government.
Some of this is like slightly exaggeration, but this is the way it feels from the Israeli perspective. United Kingdom canceled around 30 licenses to supply weapons. 4, France and Spain advocate for full weapon embargo. 5, Canada suspended 30 permits for arms sales. And then 6 is this latest USA threatens to halt weapon supply amid its fight with Hezbollah. And then they quote, allies with ironclad support, unquote, Israel.
So what he's showing us is that Israel has indeed become the same kind of international pariah that South Africa used to be. South Africa, when it got to this state, there wasn't long on the clock before dismantling apartheid in South Africa. Right now, obviously, the political appetite in Israel from Israeli citizens for dismantling Israeli apartheid is just non-existent. But the international pressure is starting to mount. And it's not just international pressure, it's actually United States public opinion that is in support of, at the very least, something like a weapons embargo, or at least like drawing a line in the sand and threatening one.
Will prevail with or without you. So on the one hand, from the left, we see this letter going to Israel as, what took you so long? There's a year in, you're not serious. You're not actually going to do any of this. From Israel's perspective, they see themselves completely isolated. The left-wing perspective, or not it's not the left wing, it's my perspective. The question of what took you so long made up most of the press briefing. Like
well, that's the question, is how real is this? And also, if you put a month deadline, that's after the election, right? Because we're 20 some days to the election. Yes. So reality is you're not doing anything until after the election. And seems to be the case. Right, and what that thing is, I think is starting to become clear. But your question is the one that everybody who read this letter immediately asked, which is, what took you so long? And this was also asked of Matt Miller. We can roll this from the State Department.
The Foreign Assistance Act says, when it's made known to the president that the government of such country...
And my question is, why 30 days?
...or otherwise restricts directly or indirectly the transport of delivery of United States humanitarian assistance. It does not have arbitrarily. So given you are already saying humanitarian assistance is very low and putting in front of Israel a bunch of concrete measures on how to improve it, why are you waiting for another 30 days to implement the law?
Because we believe it's appropriate to give them a chance to cure the problem. And international humanitarian law does make it...
Then why didn't you do this earlier? Why didn't you do this way the fuck earlier?
Exceptions for...
Like, as soon as you recognized that aid wasn't being allowed into northern Gaza, why didn't you do that then?
I'll give you an example. Dual-use items is a good example. If there are dual-use items that legitimately could be used as a military purpose, of course, governments aren't required to let those dual-use items in, which is not to say that they can use that exception as a blanket.
So remember, dual-use came up in the Destiny debate on Breaking Points, where they were talking about cookies and sugar and stuff like that, right? But no, he's talking about...
restriction on anything that can be used as a dual-use item.
So there was a lot of talking around in circles at the press briefing, which combined like some
dual-use item is an item that is necessary for human life, but could be put to like a weapons purpose.
Stern words like yes, like right now Israel we do believe is in violation of 620I, this thing that says you can't send military aid to a country that is blocking U.S. humanitarian aid. But they say, wait, we want to give them a moment to cure this. The context for this, like you said, is okay. 30 days is after the election. What's going to happen after the election? And I think we're starting to see that. So, Controller, I'm sorry, we'll skip me for now. I had a couple questions that I think are interesting, but are not exactly on this particular topic. Let's finish this topic first. If we could jump.
And chat, let me know if I'm going too fast. I just like they're slow talkers, and we got a lot to get to. So,
Senator Lindsey Graham talking about a quote unquote day after plan that is starting to be developed, kind of absent the Palestinians, between the U.S., the Israelis, and some of their Gulf partners over there. And I think you're going to start to see this come into focus. Go ahead.
Now's the time, if you're ever going to do it, to start a dialogue with Saudi Arabia about the day after.
Right, but the Saudis have also been very clear that what they want in return, that there needs to be a viable...
It sounds like what Lindsey Graham's talking about is a reinvigorated attempt at the Abraham Accords. What that ignores is the fact that the Abraham Accords is what brought us to the place that we're in now, along with some other Trump policies regarding Israel, including allowing the annexation of the Golan Heights, including allowing the movement of the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. It's more bad policy, and that's what he's chomping at the bit for, is like, as soon as this is over, right, which, it seems like the strategy is legit, like, to starve the Palestinians out, to achieve some sort of a surrender, terms, in order for Netanyahu to be able to kind of wave this in the face of the Israeli voters. And, he's got an election coming up in 2026. Even if he does not step down, as many people did want him to do before October 7th, and actually, after October 7th, a lot of people blame him for the attacks on October 7th, for the fact that there wasn't a meaningful response from the Israeli defense forces in the beginning, right? There was no the fact that that October 7th proceeded kind of unopposed, right? So there's a lot of uncertainty, there was a lot of uncertainty in the Netanyahu administration based on that. Now, after the perceived success of the pager attacks, the assassination of multiple Hezbollah figures, and what they're trying to do in Gaza, which is achieve some sort of surrender, right? That sort of translates into a higher approval rating for Netanyahu and the possibility of him staying in office, right? He's also, wanting to make it as likely as possible that Trump will win in the United States. So, keeping things chaotic, keeping at least the threat, if not the active of war against Iran on the table. is beneficial, but ostensibly, now he could declare victory in Gaza and maybe continue the incursion into Lebanon. And these policies are popular as long as Israel's doing well, as long as Israel is perceived to be winning among the Israeli population.
Independent Palestinian state, which the Israelis recognize.
They want two things. For them to recognize the state of Israel, they want a defense agreement with the United States. Saudi Arabia and the United States would have a mutual defense agreement like we have with Japan and Australia. In other words, the United States would go to war for Saudi Arabia. That requires 67 votes in the U.S. Senate. Senator Blumenthal is a Democrat trying to get the votes. I told MBS a year and a half ago, that will be a heavy lift, but I will try.
But the Israelis also have to want to recognize an independent Palestinian state. They're not going to do that.
An independent sovereign nation called Palestine, with security guarantees for Israel to make sure there's no future October 7th. It will be more like an emirate than it will be a democracy. MBS and MBZ at the UAE will come in and rebuild Gaza. They will reform the PA. They will create an enclave in the Palestine that can live in peace and harmony with Israel. They will stop teaching their children to kill the Jews. A de-radicalized, a demilitarized.
Is that actually true? Is that how they teach it?
Yes, literally.
So what's going on there?
Yes.
Yeah, no, they're talking about the Saudification of, I don't know, at least Gaza, if not, Palestine, writ large.
The key phrase there is from Graham, if you pick this up, was, quote, called Palestine. So this morning, Barack Ravi had another piece, and this goes into the context of what we're talking about here. Basically, Ron Dermer.
Yeah. So, look, this is not something that would be a puppet state, right? What they're proposing right now sounds a lot like a puppet state. It's not a popular choice for people in Palestine to have their government Saudified, or really to have this government imposed upon them. So it's a puppet government that they're talking about here.
Who is Netanyahu's top aide, and some top officials over at the UAE met with Antony Blinken and presented him with the proposal that you basically just heard Lindsey Graham lay out. Lindsey Graham was about a week ago. But this is putting it down in paper form. And what they asked Blinken to do was perhaps after the election to present it as a U.S. plan, that the U.S. has decided that this is the way to go forward. And the plan sidesteps the idea of Palestinian statehood because, as the report lays out, Netanyahu is stridently opposed to any mention of a two-state solution. That any idea that Palestinians would get any version of statehood in this plan is something that Netanyahu rejects. Yet he is still working with the UAE on moving forward with this plan. And so that's where it goes back.
Invix is mentioning that you've heard that Biden was mad at Netanyahu. He does release. There are leaks released where Biden's fuming at Netanyahu, but it doesn't seem to have translated into anything. It may just be PR, right? It may just be bullshit.
Back to Lindsey Graham's idea of quote unquote called Palestine. So what that means basically, as he said, it would be an emirate. So it would be something
under the UAE. Is that
so? Yeah. So basically, the U.S., the UAE, Saudi Arabia, who knows who else would get in, and they'd say, okay, we're getting rid of Abbas. And we're getting rid of because Israel doesn't even approve of the Palestinian Authority being involved in this, and they will create some other mechanism that they will call independent. They will call Palestine, and the UAE and Saudi Arabia will offer the security guarantees, and then they'll offer the funding. The U.S. will fund it as well, and Israel will then have to withdraw, but it will not be remotely sovereign. And who
will be the sovereign? UAE.
Well, the whole thing's fake.
Yeah, exactly. I think right. What I'm just trying to get.
So basically, the way for Israel to agree to it would have to have no real sovereignty, but it would have to be called sovereign.
Look, this is nation building.
This is bullshit. What are you talking about? This is nation building. I mean, wait. Does he mean in a? Let me run him for a little longer. Maybe he means in a pejorative sense.
Trying to impose. First of all,
okay. And notice what we haven't talked about here. Palestine.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I've lived in the Gulf. The Gulf, they don't care about Palestine. Okay, but the leaders themselves, they don't care at all.
So, but if you want to understand this, right? There's two sides in the Middle East, right? I'm oversimplifying it, right? There's the Saudi-Israeli axis, and then there's the Iranian axis. And because they're being attacked by the Saudi-Israeli axis, the Palestinians have are more amenable to the other side of things, right? So what you're doing is you're imposing a puppet government run by a side that the Palestinians are going to perceive, and rightly so, as their enemy, right? This is not a, I don't know what this is it's going to be an extremely unpopular puppet government.
Period. They gave up a long time ago. They wouldn't even open their mouths.
They hate that they have to deal with it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, the actual people there who live, they definitely do. But the actual leadership, they care less. They just want to be rich, live in London. That's all they care about. But so this is like a thorny problem for them. For them to, if you have to consider this, to impose like the rule from the UAE onto people of whom they have like no relation to, both, yeah, they may speak the same language. That's about it. Who they frankly like disdain and already look down upon. That's a recipe for disaster. What do you think is going to happen? You're going to have massive insurgency. You're going to have like the funding for it. It will be like Afghanistan 2.0 in terms of trying to impose this like fake form of government with allies and partners and all of this other onto. And if you were Hamas, like why would you even accept that? You would just fight against now this new insurgency. The only thing they would do is bail out Israel because they're the ones who don't want to be the occupied.
And Israel won't even accept this,
right?
Which is wild.
Yeah.
And what's so delusional about it is that they still have this idea that it's the textbooks that's creating like the hostility and the conflict. Every school in Gaza has been destroyed by Israel's assault on Gaza. Like you're talking about textbooks? They're blowing up all of the schools. If you talk to Palestinians who live in Gaza and ask them about the textbooks, someone will say, yeah, there actually is some like cringeworthy stuff in there that should be like edited out. But the idea that the resentment of Jewish Israelis comes from the textbooks ignores the fact that they've been getting bombed for a year and starved to death, and pushed into an enclave where like infectious disease is like spreading out of control. Like the material conditions are creating the resentment. And if you print a new textbook that is filled with propaganda about the virtues of the Israeli state, you don't even have a school left standing where you can hand that textbook out to students. Like it's so utterly divorced from the reality on the ground that you wonder, when is this going to actually clash?
Yeah.
Like, and we. Let alone.
It's funny. I haven't heard Brian Grimm or really anybody in the media use the term material conditions. If you're not familiar, that's a Marxian term. And the one political pundit who I do hear using the term material condition is Hassan Piker. I'm wondering if we're seeing the influence of Hassan. If people are picking up on, seeing Hassan's clips and being like, material conditions. Yeah, that's a great way to put it, without even realizing this is Marxism.
The fact that so many bombs have been dropped on Gaza that the unexploded ordnance itself will take decades to remove before you can even do the reconstruction.
What this just reeks of me is like imperial, agenda, right? Like imposing rule, drawing state line, all these things we supposedly.
And my guess,
are
this is something,
and it might actually even be worse because it doesn't even involve any of the people who supposedly would rule over.
And my guess is we will see something like this.
Oh, absolutely, I agree with you. This is the most likely outcome. But the point is that in the 21st century, it's not going to last. As in the power, the amount of force it would take to enforce something like this is not. I mean, it is within the realm of possibility for the U.S. It shouldn't be. We have no interest in doing this. Doesn't mean, I guess, that we wouldn't get locked into it. But it would turn into a multi-decade quagmire. It would just be completely unsustainable.
Yeah, and they basically would just have to shrink the population down to, which is what they're ultimately trying to do, shrink the population down to a quote-unquote manageable size. I think if people want to see my exchanges with the states, we can say tomorrow. It's like we're running low on time. People can check out the drop site Twitter.
All right, so I want to, speaking of Hassan, I want to show you his take on this, his explanation for.
Is a direct activation of the Leahy Law. America is supposed to. We know that America is a fucking a consistent violator of international law. We know that already, right? But this stuff is in the books, and there's a reason why they play this song and dance where they're like, oh, well, we don't recognize that Israel's violating human rights law, even though our own internal fucking data shows that they are. Like, oops, USAID gave me an internal memo, and I just kind of ripped it apart and lied to Congress. I'm Anthony Blinken. They do that kind of song and dance because there is obviously supposed to be some kind of like something that keeps liberals together, something that makes liberals believe that there is like rules around this sort of thing, right? You can't go too far ahead. You have to play the song and dance. So it's worse than I heard. Kamala camp and Biden camp are bitter for many reasons. Kamala doesn't take advice from the Biden advisors. Remember, don't say weird. That was them. Fired several. Biden is bitter. He got kicked out. And Harrison is a Biden guy.
Wait, let me get this. Harrison is a Biden guy, so the DNC also dislikes Kamala. Remember DNC fail with Gaza. Speaker, that was Harrison. We gotta figure out who Harrison is.
So the DNC also dislikes Kamala. Remember DNC failed with Gaza Speaker Harrison. So he's probably fired if she wins. Yeah, I think that there is obviously internal division here. Both parties don't necessarily care about like the humanitarian needs of Gazans. They don't really think that Palestinians are human beings worthy of dignity and freedom. Like that part is obvious, because if they did, they would be fucking screaming. At least one party would be like, what the fuck is going on here? This is completely unacceptable. But they are losers all the way down. Democrats might come out of an immediate embargo now because this fucks them completely. If they want to win, they should do it like they should have before. Yes, for months and months, I have said this. And if this happened one day, you would obviously, immediately, you would see every single fucking commentator on CNN and MSNBC speaking like they literally have been locked in and tuned into the Hassan Ivy broadcast for the past fucking 12 months. Oh, we knew it. Oh, how gracious, how beautiful, how bold. It came too late, but it still happened, blah, blah, blah. The only way that Kamala gets out of this fucking polling hole that she's currently found herself in is if she, for, you know, somehow, with some stroke of luck, with a Hail Mary campaign, gets the Brandon camp to like actually force Israel to do a ceasefire. That's it. Why is Biden talking about 30 days when he won't be president either way? Why didn't they make Kamala promise? No, he'd be lame duck. He is still the president. He's still the president until January 20th. So why is this bad for Kamala? I missed that part. What do you mean, why is this bad for Kamala? There is one thing that could potentially... Okay, let's dial this back for a second, okay? Boom. I have the DC wonk hat on, okay? Forget everything. I am now a bloodless sociopathic monster who only cares about woke liberalism. You know, I love the Democratic Party, okay? Imagine me as someone totally different. I'm Jamie Harrison. Now listen, as Jamie Harrison, I'm looking at the fucking polls, okay? I'm a Jamie Harrison type. I'm looking at the polls. I'm seeing that over the past month, undecideds have started swinging in Trump's direction. And what has happened in that past month? Donald Trump has done the fucking media campaign. He's been going after all of these other avenues where he could possibly pick up a lot of low propensity, mid propensity voters in the podcast circuit, yada, yada, yada. But all of a sudden, the momentum from the...
I don't know how fucking nerdy Hassan's chat is. Like the feeling that I get from them is that, like, yeah, Jamie Harrison, of course, right? If you're like me, you don't know who the fuck this is, but let me give you the background. Jamie Harrison is the chair of the Democratic National Committee from South Carolina. Has been was elected in 2021 following Joe Biden's victory in 2020. Harrison was nominated by Biden to be the chair of the DNC, succeeding Tom Perez. Challenged Lindsey Graham in 2020. Lost the election to Graham. So that's Jamie Harrison, right? So we're talking about, you know, the person kind of in control of the DNC, right? That's the interaction between, or the influence of Harrison on the Kamala campaign, like Hassan mentioned, on the DNC, where there was scheduled to be a speaker from Palestine who was going to speak about Palestine and then proceed to endorse Kamala Harris. You didn't see that speech because they canceled it. They didn't want to have anyone from Palestine on that stage.
Kamala camp has completely been cut short, and now the momentum is swinging in Trump's direction. Momentum is now swinging in Trump's direction. I look at the avenues of communication. What do I have in front of me? I can't say anything about immigration because I'm locked the fuck in. I've spent tens of millions of dollars talking about how I am going to be the one that annihilates the migrants with my border wall, and Trump is silly and goofy and hypocritical, yada, yada, yada. So I can't make a massive communications change on that front. I've already destroyed that. I can't do that. I'm seeing Black and Hispanic men under a certain age slipping dramatically to the Trump camp. I'm looking at Donald Trump beating my campaign on low and mid propensity voters by 9 points. I'm, on the other hand, beating Donald Trump with high propensity voters by 4 to 5 points. That's not great. There are far more mid to low propensity voters out there by numbers, and the percentages are higher. So it's not a good situation for me at all. All signs point to alarm bells ringing. The campaign is on fire. We have a massive war chest. We have pumped tens of millions of dollars specifically into Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and many of these other important states. And yet the needle hasn't moved in my direction. It's moved in the opposite direction. That means the message that I'm putting out there is not working. It's not working. Now, there's one thing that I have in my power that I could do. There is one weapon that I can wield here. Because like the abortion stuff, it's working, but it's clearly not enough to swing the polls. There's one thing I do have, though. Americans broadly want this Israel thing to be wrapped up. That's it. It could be.
You get what he's saying? So he's saying that there's a lot of money being pumped out. There's a huge war chest. Like there's a lot of money that's been raised. It's being used for ads putting out Kamala's message, which is, you know, we stand with Israel. We're against immigration. We hate immigration. Trump, why won't Trump sign this immigration bill so we can curtail immigration, right? But with like a little edge of like, yeah, you know, eventually it would be really nice to have a path to citizenship. But so this message, right? This having like one foot on either side of the fence thing, it's not working, right? It's not working. It's not winning. Instead of your numbers increasing, your numbers are going down. And I don't know if he's exaggerating slightly, but I mean, the basic gist of the election is that it is close as fuck. It has been close as fuck, and it shows no signs of moving away from being close as fuck either. Is that, you know, momentum for Trump? Possibly, but it's definitely not momentum for Harris. And if Harris wants to secure the election, given the fact that you have seen multiple elections where Democrats were ahead by a lot and either won by only a little or did not end up winning despite being ahead in the polls. If you want that breathing room, if you want to be in a situation where you're a little bit more comfortable on election day, you need to see those numbers go up. They're not going up. So Hassan's saying, what do you do? What do you do? The message is off. Something needs to change. Can you change immigration? You kind of can't. You already fucked that bag, right? If you wanted to stand up against Trump's anti-immigrant rhetoric, that boat has already left, right? That's you've already given up on that, right? Like it's bad enough that the Democrats, you know, throw their own constituency under the bus and completely cave to Trump on immigration. It would be even worse if they tried to be like, you know, if they tried to be like, psych. You know, you can't do that, right? So like Hassan's looking at all the different things. How could you change the message? What could you change? What position is not working, right? And the one that makes sense, the one that is possible to change at this point in the election, actually in this case happens to be the one that you know, the people have the biggest moral qualm with the Harris administration about. Or the Harris administration, the Harris campaign, the Biden administration. You get what I'm saying? And that is Palestine.
Be for a multitude of different reasons, but the overwhelming majority of Americans want a ceasefire. That's it. The majority of Republicans want a ceasefire. Okay, that is a massively consequential and.
So let's take a look at these stats. Now, I want you to remember something, right? In any sort of polling, the numbers that you get in support, as opposition, etc., are very dependent on your ability to like on the way that you ask the question, right? So in this case, do you support or oppose the U.S. calling for a permanent ceasefire and de-escalation of violence in Gaza, right? That's the question that's being asked. We're not asking, you know, contingent, we're not asking to make arms contingent on this or anything like that. We're just asking, like, do you think the U.S. should be strongly pushing Israel towards a ceasefire and de-escalation of violence in Gaza? All voters, 67% support, 22 oppose. Democrats, 77% support, 13% oppose. Independent, 69% support, 19 oppose. Republican, 56%. So even within the Republican Party, you've got a majority. You've got a clear majority, right? Pushing for a ceasefire and getting a ceasefire is extremely popular with the American voters.
Massively popular thing that I could do. And if I do it now, there isn't enough time or money that these big moneyed interests can fucking attack me on, right? Because right now.
So some of you were thinking AIPAC. What about AIPAC, right? You know, you wanna put out this messaging. You wanna what's up, Brady? Thank you for joining up. Thank you for becoming a member. So yeah, like the obvious question is, what about AIPAC? What about you know, lobbyists? What about PACs and stuff like that, right? If you're gonna do this, the worry is that you're gonna get a bunch of negative ads on you because of this. But as Hassan is pointing out, it's kind of too late for them to cut new ads, right? So this is a time where they could, in a consequence-free way, finally do the right thing, or at least signal towards that. And Biden is standing in the way of that. But Biden has done this in the worst possible way.
Now, if she did that, how much money could AIPAC spend against fucking Kamala Harris on the general election? How important could that be for Americans when obviously Americans don't give a fuck and they actually like a ceasefire in Israel, right? There is not enough time and not enough money to counter this objectively popular thing that she could do. So the only weapon that they have in their hands to change this trajectory is not even a communication, a difference in communicating, like the humanity of the Palestinians or the humanity of the Lebanese people. Like, that is too far gone. It's done. You've lost. You have to make actionable change and immediately do a full-throated media campaign to be like, we did that shit. You wanted it, we did that shit. We are the ones who did that. That's it. Surely AIPAC money wouldn't matter. Yes, it doesn't matter. You want to know why it doesn't matter? Because this is a fucking general election. It's an objectively popular policy that like tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of Americans are on board with. And last but not least, there isn't enough time for AIPAC to cut anti-Kamala ads, especially when Kamala could counter that with positive messaging surrounding this issue. It's not necessarily about separating herself from Biden. It's far too late for that. It's about forcing Biden's hand to push for a ceasefire, and it seems like Biden is not interested in doing that. Common sense gun control popular. Common sense no genociding popular. Yeah, except common sense no genociding is more popular than common sense gun control right now. It is the 5th priority amongst Americans. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th one is Israel-Palestine, according to the NBC poll we looked at. Kamala Harris is losing to Trump by fucking 15 to 18 points on that issue. They think Americans, for some reason, possibly because Trump is not currently in charge overseeing this genocide, think that Trump would be better on Israel. And that's not because they think that Donald Trump is saying that he's going to continue the genocide, and that's why. Because that is inconsistent when you look at the actual fucking polling numbers on the issue of the ceasefire, where majority Republicans want a ceasefire as well. Donald Trump leads Kamala Harris on handling Israel-Ukraine wars, Wall Street Journal poll shows.
And what we have seen over the past few months is that the level of humanitarian assistance has not been sustained. In fact, it has fallen by over 50% from where it was at its peak. So the Secretary, along with Secretary Austin, thought it was appropriate to make clear to the government of Israel that there are changes that they need to make again to see that the level of assistance making it into Gaza comes back up from the very, very low levels that it is at today.
And the consequence, if they don't do that, is what?
So I'm not going to speak today. Obviously, we made clear when we released our report that was mandated under National Security Memorandum 20 that there are provisions under U.S. law that require us to make certain certifications, and to make those certifications, we have to see that Israel is not arbitrarily denying humanitarian assistance making it into Gaza. When the Secretary made his conclusions under that report in April, he did so based on the changes that we had seen them put into place and the increased levels of humanitarian assistance. But of course, those levels of humanitarian assistance have to be sustained.
Yeah, but what's the consequence?
There are implications under U.S. law, under policy, that I'm not going to speak to here, largely because we hope that Israel makes the changes that the Secretary outlined in the letter.
I mean, you say that there are implications to it. Obviously, under U.S. law, that's assistance. Is there specific assistance that come under scrutiny?
So I don't want to deal with any hypotheticals. You are right that it's just a plain reading of U.S. law. If you look at the provisions of U.S. law, that we are required to conduct assessments and find that recipients.
Damn, where was that earlier, bro? What the fuck? That's crazy. Turns out there is a fucking law, huh? This is my Turkish goat, Hümeyra Pamuk, friend of the show, pushing the state spokesperson on the humanitarian aid to Gaza. Why are you waiting another 30 days to implement the law, she says. Miller says, we believe it is appropriate to give them a chance to cure the problem. It has been over a year now. Officials from this department have addressed that Israel is persistently and arbitrarily impeding aid into Gaza. If it's already doing it, why is the U.S. waiting? There are people inside this building who reach the opposite conclusion, he says. Good shit. Have you ever heard that when companies are about to fail, they assign a woman CEO and then say, see, she messed up? Yeah, like Twitter. I always thought that was just for corporations. I didn't know they could do this for an election. Yeah, they're doing it to the Democratic Party. That's such a funny, that is a funny take. I agree with that. They literally are just like, yeah, see, the woman fucked it up. It's the same shit, dude. What was it? Linda Yaccarino or whatever, becoming the CEO of Twitter to fucking throw the goddamn, to throw the goddamn platform in a fucking wastebasket. Yeah, that's great.
Recipients of U.S. military assistance do not arbitrarily deny or impede.
Fucking throw the goddamn to throw the goddamn platform in a fucking wastebasket. Yeah, that's great.
Recipients of U.S. military assistance do not arbitrarily deny or impede the provisioning of U.S. humanitarian assistance. That's just the law, and we, of course, will follow the law. But our hope is that Israel will make the changes that we have outlined and that we have recommended, and that the result of those changes will be a dramatic...
Why would they do that? Why would they do that? Of course they're not going to do that. They've never done that. For 12 months, you haven't done that.
Dramatic increase in humanitarian assistance. Ultimately, we are focused on the bottom line here. It's just it. Humanitarian assistance had been low. The changes that we had recommended had gotten it up, and those levels have not been sustained, and so we need to see further changes by the government of Israel.
I mean, obviously the timing of this, I know you don't explicitly do politics, but there's an election coming up here. To what extent is that a factor? I mean, 30 days from now would be after the U.S. election. It's been a year since the conflict has been ongoing. The president has repeatedly warned Israel about assistance, about civilian casualties, with at best mixed results sometimes. This happened just 30 days before the election. To what extent was the election a factor?
It is not a factor at all. The bottom line is we felt it was appropriate if we are making clear to the government of Israel that there are these changes that need to be implemented, that we give them an appropriate period of time to implement them. We didn't think it was appropriate to send a letter and just say this has to happen overnight. We give them make clear there's a short window in which we want to see changes because the humanitarian situation is so dire on the ground, but it is appropriate to give them some time to work through the different issues and find ways to get the level of trucks, get the level of food, water, medicine back up to acceptable levels. Yeah, Mayor.
Hi, Matt. So the 620I Foreign Assistance Act, actually doesn't have the word arbitrarily. You say it's the law, but the NSM 20, which is a memorandum, has the word arbitrarily.
Oh my God, thank you so much.
The Foreign Assistance Act says, when it's made known to the president that the government of such country prohibits or otherwise restricts directly or indirectly the transport of delivery of United States
$10. NCC, you've been muted.
You've been muted.
Minutes now.
For how many minutes? A few minutes. God damn.
Assistance. It does not have arbitrarily. So given you are already saying humanitarian assistance is very low and putting in front of Israel a bunch of concrete measures.
Thank you for the super chat, Narwhal by Nature.
How to improve it. Why are you waiting for another 30 days to implement the law?
Because we believe it's appropriate to give them a chance to cure the problem. And international humanitarian law does make exceptions for certain, I'll give you an example. Dual-use items is a good example. If there are dual-use items that legitimately could be used as a military purpose, of course governments aren't required to let those dual-use items in, which is not to say that they can use that exception as a blanket restriction on anything that can be used as a dual-use item. For example, if there are military movements happening in a certain period of time, governments can restrict the provision of humanitarian aid during that period because obviously you wouldn't want to put humanitarian workers at jeopardy. So it is not accurate to say that there can be no restrictions. It's that those restrictions ultimately can't block civilians from getting the humanitarian access that they need. And that is what we're focused on doing. And so we think it's appropriate. Ultimately, let me just say, ultimately what we want to see here is results. This isn't about making a...
Bro, you don't understand. There is dual use for the fucking flower, okay? Dual use goods, baby. Scissors. Dual use. Could be used for terrorism. Could also be used to cut medical gauze, but guess what? There's dual use for medical gauze too. I feel like this community's gotten so doomer-pilled.
Wait, was that a Zen? Can anybody tell me, is that a Zen that he just put in his mouth?
Watch y'all at this point, man. Something about like directly looking at a ongoing genocide for 12 fucking months on end with seemingly no improvements to the living conditions of the Palestinian people as it gets worse and worse every fucking day. kind of has a doomer slant to it, don't you think? Like, my bad, bro. My bad if we're fucking up the vibes for you. Brad Summer. What do you mean, dude? The fuck? It's not only just like doomer pilled or whatever, okay? I try to do my very best in the midst of the ongoing coverage of the fucking genocide that we are funding and facilitating. I try to do my very best to just have like a cheery approach to see the fucking silver lining. But beyond that, like, I give liberals what they want. I give liberals the electoral calculus as well to all of this. Like, if that makes you feel bad, if that makes you feel shitty, I don't know what to tell you, you know? Smile and dial, dude. Saying you guys are doomer pilled is...
Zen, it's a ZYN. It's a pouch of like a nicotine pouch that, if you look behind Hassan, there's like a stack of tins, I guess you'd call them, right? Little like tins, little discs, and they've got Zen, right? It's pouch not tobacco, right? It's not tobacco, but it is nicotine, and I think that's what he just had in his mouth.
It's pretty funny. Do you actually think?
I don't know anything about this stuff, right? For me, tobacco has always been probably a good thing, probably really lucky for me, right? That nicotine only makes my head spin. It makes me nauseous. It makes me dizzy. It doesn't make me anything good, right? So I've never. Despite, having tried to pick up smoking when I was very young, I never really liked it.
Will implement arms embargo? Fuck no, dude. What? No, they should have done it a million times over.
But yeah, this is like next level stuff. Like, understand, right? The sort of like social change that's gone on in the U.S., right? You get like 2010s, you're like phasing out tobacco. You're phasing out cigarettes. People are quitting cigarettes. Sometime in 2010, I guess they come up with the pens and the the vapes, right? And a lot of people who had just quit smoking pick up a vape, right? And then more news comes out that says, actually, we don't know for sure that vaping is any better than smoking. Maybe vaping's just as bad, right? And then and now you have the emergence of oh my god. Are we good, chat? Are we good? Now you have the emergence of all kinds of issues today. I might have just hiccuped on screen for you, but hopefully we're back now. But then you get the emergence of more of like the chewable sort of products, including this, which is like it's like, or the gums. Yeah, people start chewing gums. People start chewing gums to, because they know that the vaping is bad for them. They know that smoking is bad for them, so they start chewing like nicotine gum. I mean, it's meant to sort of get you off nicotine, but some people just, chew it to get their dosage of nicotine. And then the Zen is kind of like it's just like a little packet, I guess, that people put under their gums.
Here's a good take, by the way, from the Trillbillies. Terrace Ray says, when I say the Palestinian issue is preeminent for me, I don't mean that it comes before every other issue. I mean that it is the primary contradiction around which everything else unravels. This is it, guys. This is what slavery was in the 19th century. It's the check coming due. Absolutely correct take. No, I'm not going to do his accent. Shut the fuck up. But it's correct. It is the most like obvious, glaringly obvious inconsistency that you can imagine. It goes against every single fucking moment that America has stood tall and proud atop the mountain of empire and said, we are the preeminent defenders of the rule-based international order. It just showcases in full display that we are a bloodthirsty, genocidal empire that has no issues eviscerating children, no issues eviscerating teenagers inside of a tent in a fucking hospital, lighting them on fire. It is a wake-up call, in my opinion, for a lot of people in the Western world too. Like they see it. They see how America's response to this is to try to pummel anyone and everyone that says, hey, this is fucked up. It's so clear. The inconsistencies are so obvious. The inhumanity is so obvious. It is the issue. It is the issue. And in a way, it's like when people go, well, what about this? Or what about that? What about Sudan, right? Like those are obviously massive humanitarian crises as well that countries that we back are funding and facilitating, like the UAE. But beyond that, this is a direct through line of America, what America says versus what America does. No, it's not whataboutism, Andy's. Like, that is a massive humanitarian catastrophe also unfolding right there. They're directly in the hands of our allies, utilizing some of the bounty that we have afforded them in terms of security contracts. The issue here, however, is that is still like at least 2 ticks removed from direct American intervention, whereas America and Israel are like this. America and Israel are like this. It's very obvious. It's like when Israel kills a Palestinian child, Most people recognize that it's America killing that child. So what is this guy saying here? Israel should let the aid get in and then bomb them? Yes. And Israel's saying, nah, we're not even going to do that.
Rhetorical statement. It's not about making any kind of threats. It's about seeing the situation reversed. And so that the civilians in Gaza who are not getting adequate access to food and medicine and other humanitarian goods today actually see, as a result of our efforts, a change in their daily lives. And that's what we're focused on achieving, and that's what we are trying to achieve through this letter.
Sure, but guess what?
Not a good change. Like not peace, not a ceasefire. But they're not going to starve to death, or they're going to starve more slowly, right? God damn.
I'm trying to get at, and I'll ask you again, is like, we've been at this for over a year now. You have made these warnings dozens of times, if not more, from this podium. Secretary has done it.
Oh my God, chat.
And yet we're here. Other outlets have reported, that Reuters has reported all the way back in April, that officials from this department have assessed in internal memos that Israel, quote, is persistently and arbitrarily
Matt Miller, the baby killer,
impeding aid in Gaza. So if the law is already being, like, I mean, if it's already doing it, why is the United States waiting?
So
there is weird buffering. Make sure to hit refresh.
First of all, that is not, so we've been over this before, I know, from this podium. There are people that reach that conclusion, and there are people inside this building who reach the opposite conclusion. So I think it's...
Oh, shit, dude. There's people have reached the opposite conclusion. No, they haven't. No, they haven't. They're just lying, okay? That's it. They're just lying. And it's pretty obvious that they're just lying, because virtually not even virtually, every single humanitarian aid organization, international institutions of justice have come to the same exact conclusion after stepping foot inside of Gaza. Israel is not rendering aid to the civilian population of Gaza as they endlessly bomb them, as they move them around the Gaza Strip, tens of thousands of people at a time, and fucking kill them in the process, and blow up the fucking safer zones, which is a new distinction. It's not a safe zone, because safe zones come with, you know, legal qualifiers of what you can and can't do. So they're calling it safer zones, and then they bomb those safer zones as well. That's it. Every single institution knows exactly what the fuck is going on, including, but not limited to, the American State Department. Their own internal memos show this reality. You read all of that, you see all of that, and you go, I don't give a fuck. That's it. And the American government under the Trump administration would have done the exact same fucking incompetent bullshit. It's just that the expectation from liberals is that they are supposed to be the adults in the room. You know, they're not.
It's important to state that for the record, that when you have difficult situations, it's not uncommon for people to reach different assessments. Ultimately, if you look at the last year and our record of working to get humanitarian assistance into Gaza, what you've seen is the U.S. intervening at critical moments. Going back to October 12th, let's not forget that, it wasn't October, it was October 16th. So just a few days after October 7th, that the secretary was negotiating with the government of Israel until 2 in the morning in Tel Aviv to get the first trucks.
Aw, dude, it was so hard for him. It was so hard for him. He was trying his besties to fucking get like a truck of flour that has been sitting outside of the fucking boundary. What do you mean, dude? What the fuck are we talking about? Without the United States of America, Israel does not exist. Every single thing that the Biden administration...
Look, chat, without you, I don't exist. So I want to thank my Patreons. I usually forget to do this until later in the stream, but yeah, my Patreon is open. You can get the videos when they come out at a unedited and uncensored sort of way. So you get to hear me say the F word a lot more, and you also get to, you know, the videos are longer, they're uncut, right? That's the base weasel tier, and you know, you get you get those videos that to you with that level of Patreon. At the $5 level of Patreon, you get a fancy shout out every time I stream. So I'm gonna give shouts out to my fancy weasels right now. Shouts out to Temporal Insanity, shouts out to Funky Monkey, shouts out to Moino, shouts out to Just Julie, shouts out to Jules K, shouts out to JR. Fancy shout outs out to both Zerazerix and Omega Star. My fancy Weagles? Wow, what, I'm thinking of Dave Weagle or something. I don't know. But no, that is so yeah, thanks. And remember, if you're donating, to let me know in the chat which of these topics, AOC versus Fetterman, Hasanabi on Pod Save America, Crisis of Masculinity, Ted Cruz might lose the Texas Senate, you want to see as far as bonus content. We are 27% of the way there. So well within striking distance of getting some bonus content on this very stream. Also, Patreon counts for that as well.
Has done in terms of their bear hug Netanyahu strategy should be viewed from that lens. Without the $20 billion of weapons that we shipped willingly and happily in direct contravention of American laws and international humanitarian laws to a serial violator of human rights, a genocidal apartheid nation state that is conducting a litany of war crimes, including the worst crime of all, genocide. Every single aspect of this conversation it should be read with Biden is directly responsible for it. Like, we literally have, as of yesterday, actual boots on the ground. 100 American troops have been deployed into Israel to beef up Israel's anti-ballistic missile systems, okay? Missile defenses. Why are they doing that? Because they want to defend Israel when Israel inevitably does not listen to Joseph Robinette Brandon and fucking blows up nuclear silos or whatever the fuck, and Iran rains down missiles. Will that be successful? Will the 100 American troops be...
The real reason when countries put in small amounts of troops, it's usually not for a military goal. It's usually what's called a tripwire. And that tripwire means that if Iran goes ham on Israel and some of those U.S. troops end up dead, then the U.S. has got a perfect pretext to strike back at Iran, right? And what that's there for is to disincentivize Iran from, doing that, right? It's a way to, it's just a...
able to defend against a barrage, a salvo of Iranian hypersonic missiles.
But it is the U.S. ratcheting things up and letting Iran know that if it defends itself, right, that it's there's a possibility of the U.S. intervening.
I do not know. Probably not. But it doesn't even fucking matter. These guys have dropped the ball so spectacularly that at this point, they don't even give a fuck about not only the hostages in Gaza, that much is obviously clear, but they don't even give a fuck about the civilians living inside of Israel. They do not give a fuck about the potential devastation to the global economy. They just are so one-track minded, so short-sighted on this matter that they are just trying to give Israel as much territorial acquisition as possible before time runs out. It is desperation. I've repeated this when talking about Nazi Germany. I'm sure that there were Nazi generals that were like, I know for a fact that there were Nazi generals that were like, hey, dog, what the fuck are you doing? We're going to assassinate you to Adolf Hitler. There was a plot even internally. There were probably plenty of people that were like, dude, don't invade Russia. What the fuck? And he was like,
I'm not sure what he's talking about with Hitler. I'm
going to do that anyway. You can't stop me. We then turn around and look at that and go, how did they go?
Like, yeah, there were assassination plots against Hitler. That's true. I'm not sure, like, if they were to a goal of stopping Operation Barbarossa, which was the German invasion of the Soviet Union.
So wrong. Empires die. Empires die. Countries make mistakes. Countries are not these infallible, overseers that are always making the right tactical, that are always taking the right tactical approach. Even invading Poland was a hard line for a general to secretly turn against Hitler.
To Gaza. I know you were there. And over the coming months have intervened on multiple occasions when we thought the levels of assistance getting in weren't sufficient, when there were policies that needed to be changed, when there are new gates that needed to be opened. We have intervened to get that to happen. And you've seen those results. You've seen us go from 1 crossing being open to 4 crossings being open. And that is the result of U.S. intervention. Now, to answer your question, we have always said that this is an ongoing process, and our assessments are ongoing. They're not static, they're dynamic. And so when the situation changes, our assessments will change and we'll act accordingly. And that's what we're doing.
Oh, shut the f up. I can't deal with this any longer. Okay.
How did Asmongold get banned? Jeez.
Okay, so that's coming up later, right? That's Destiny giving his take on Asmongold getting banned. And as you can imagine, I don't think he has a problem with what Asmongold said. We'll get into that in a second. We're going to finish up some politics here. I wanted to take a look at this debate. I saw a little bit of the Vanguard going over it, and it looked interesting, so...
All right, well, speaking of interviews given by Trump, Maria Bartiromo, and again, credit to her, asked him some challenging questions in his recent interview with her, and Trump's probably most eyebrow-raising comments came when he was asked about, Election Day. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Let's remember, you've got 50,000 Chinese nationals in this country in the last couple of years. Yeah. You have people on the terrorist watch list, 350 in the last couple of years. You got, like you said, 13,000 murderers and 15,000 rapists. Right. What are you expecting? Joe Biden said he doesn't think it's going to be a peaceful Election Day.
Well, he doesn't have any idea what's happening in North Carolina. He spends most of his day sleeping. I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country. The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of election day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen.
The radical left enemy from within should be handled by the National Guard, or if necessary, the military. I mean, you know, I want to say that before the last election, I downplayed the possibility of like what ended up unfolding with January 6th and how far they went with fake elector slates, et cetera. And I always kind of like cringe to talk about concerns about democracy, but like, this is outrageous.
Remember what I was saying earlier about Ryan Grimm and this kind of like progressive self-hate, this lefty self-hate? Let's just hear what she had to say again.
I downplayed the possibility of like what ended up unfolding with January 6th and how far they went with fake elector slates, et cetera. And I always kind of like cringe to talk about concerns about democracy, but like, this is outrageous.
I cringe to talk about concerns about democracy. You ever notice how many people on the left are like, oh yeah, that was part of that whole Russiagate hoax and shit. And it's kind of like, there's this weird self-hating strain on the left, right? Where Ryan Grimm is like, oh, that was like a lefty screed. Don't want to do that. Crystal's talking about, I almost cringe about expressing concerns about democracy. Now, I sort of understand where this comes from, right? Because the people that you hear going the hardest on Trump as a threat to our democracy are institutional Democrats. And there's a lot of pressure on insurgent progressives to differentiate themselves from that. But it shouldn't be the kind of logic that works like, well, if I hear Hillary Clinton saying it, if I hear Kamala Harris saying it, if I hear Joseph Biden saying it, I'm not going to say it. It should be a question of like, is this a real concern? Like if it was about just Republicans being rude or Trump being rude or something like that, if it really is that kind of stuff, yeah, that's silly. But obviously, January 6th was not just, oh yeah, they were kind of rude. They smeared their shit all over the Capitol building, right? There were a little bit, there's a little bit more at stake than the sanctity of the fucking halls of Congress, you know, when it comes to January 6th. And I feel like there's this weird like knee-jerk reaction that people like Crystal Ball, who are trying to make sure that you know that she's not Hillary Clinton, you know that she's not Kamala Harris, you know that she's not like one of the, like, I don't know. I just, that's actually kind of cringe to me. As much as I detest the forces of the institutional Democratic Party, right? I just like this shit's starting to get on my nerves.
Thing for him to say.
You don't have to apologize. You don't have to apologize, right? Trump is a threat. I don't have a problem saying it. I don't think that makes me Hillary Clinton to say that Trump is a fucking threat.
And it is scary, although this time, you know, he's not in control of the federal government, so he doesn't have control of the military, so that's a good thing. But, you know, you and I both think that the most likely outcome is that this election is very, very close. And when I hear comments like this from him, I find it deeply unsettling at what the country could be in for if it is another, once again, razor-thin election. And we all know he's not going to just, like, nicely concede.
Look, I get it. I guess I would put myself in this camp. Let's put the New York Times piece up on the screen, because I actually think this is a good psychological analysis. It's the Trump voters who don't believe Trump. It says, when the former president endorses violence and proposes using government to attack his enemies, many supporters assume it's just an act. The former president has talked about weaponizing the Justice Department. This what we just talked about with with everything. There is, of course, evidence to the contrary, they say, for the people who don't believe him. But one of the ways that voters think another term might go is how they rationalize his rhetoric by affording him a reverse benefit of the doubt. They doubt and he benefits. So last Thursday, this reporter from the New York Times, Sean McCreesh, who, by the way, is a very good reporter, he just went through and he talked to several of these people. And a lot of them were like, look, I think that the media blows this stuff out of proportion for sensationalism. They're like, I don't believe that he would actually do it. Sipped his iced tea, says, I don't. So what? And then they're like, well, why is he saying he wants to do it? Go, it could just be for publicity. He's just riling up the news. I do think there's probably some element to this. But, you know, I recently was asked on a podcast, like, are you really worried about the aftermath of the election? I actually think things are more likely to go better this time than last time. A lot of the uncertainty is gone. So, for example, the Electoral Count Act now does not even allow for whatever that whole vice president situation to happen for certification. In terms of everyone was worried about the fall.
Okay, no, like, I mean, I will blame Crystal a little bit here, right? Because she's focusing on the disputation of the election. She's focusing on a scenario where Kamala Harris wins and then Trump tries to pull some shit to deny it, or to, you know, he tries to instigate some kind of, you know, right. And Sagar's pointing out that there have been laws passed and clarified since January 6th that don't allow that particular mechanism to be used. Now, it doesn't matter, right? Because remember, that mechanism was, you know, dependent on the vice president. The vice president intervening to throw us into a constitutional crisis and allow the election to be thrown to the House of Representatives, right? That was the fake slates of electors. Right. I mean, I guess they could still, you know, draft fake slates of electors, but as far as actually, you know, getting, they wouldn't have the vice president this time, because the vice president is literally the Democratic candidate for president. So, but yeah, in addition, you know, a lot of the laws have changed. That's what Sagar is saying. So yeah, I mean, is he right on that point? Yeah, like the same scenario that we had on January 6th of 2021. Sorry, yeah, 2021 is not going to happen again, right? That is, you know, that is not going to be a problem. But the idea that that's the only possible problem, and like my biggest concern isn't if Trump loses the election, although, you know, yeah, there could be something, you know, there could be a threat from that, from him refusing to acknowledge the results, or him using his legal team to try to, you know, finagle his way into office despite losing or something. There is a threat there, but the bigger threat is like once he gets in, and especially with what we're talking about, which is him talking about the enemy within, by which he means, I think, anyone on the left. He is saying Marxist and leftist and communist and Antifa and yada, yada, yada. But I from what I can tell, what he means is like the media, or what he perceives to be liberal media. What he means is actually people that are very like mainstream Democratic Party, right? That's the enemy within. He is talking about fucking using the army to go after, you know, anybody in his way. That is fucking dangerous, and there's no way to spin that. But here we go with Sagar. He's going to try to spin it anyway.
False elector scheme. Now, the Electoral Count Act has it so that the governors of those states are the ones who declare for certification. 5 out of the 7 swing states have Democratic governors. One of them, who's a Republican, is Brian Kemp, who stood up to Trump on. So, like, all of the processes through which you would see,
and has gotten very friendly with Trump since.
Some sort of like January 6th style thing. It can't really happen again. Now, that doesn't mean like violence and rallying, all that couldn't happen. But the actual.
No, you know what could happen again though? It's, don't think 2021. Think 2020. Sorry, think 2000. Think 2000, right? Something more like the Brooks Brothers riot could happen, right? There are states that have purposefully like delayed their count of mail-in ballots. There are states which are like Mississippi right now is trying to, there's Republican action trying to make sure that they don't count any mail-in votes that arrive after Election Day. So in other words, anything that arrives, what they do right now is if something is postmarked by Election Day, it counts, right? So they keep counting until they've got everything that's postmarked by Election Day, right? The Mississippi court action is seeking to stop anything from being counted that arrives after Election Day.
Actual like stuff that you want to hang on to, it's not there. Same if you.
But yeah, there are a lot of shenanigans in progress currently by state level Republicans.
You know, power of the government. I mean, last time around, Trump's own Attorney General, Bill Barr, said that it was bullshit. He literally said, I'm just quoting him. He said, this is bullshit, and wrote a whole book about it. Talked about how he wouldn't execute his orders. Trump is not in power this time around. Like a lot of the levers that they tried to grasp for, look, they can go to the legal system again.
Sagar's completely missing the fact that Bill Barr being there, Mike Pence being there, you know, the generals that were in the office that refused Trump's orders to shoot American citizens in the fucking legs to stop like protests, right? None of these people are there now. Trump's got a whole thing where he's gonna purity test everybody that goes into his cabinet, everybody that goes into his administration, everybody, and even try to like eliminate some of the civil service servants that might get in his way and replace them with loyalists. Like everything about what Trump's doing is going to circumvent the Bill Barrs of the world, the Mike Pences of the world, right?
again, go for it. I mean, you got shot down on every single case last time around. I guess I'm just not as worried. Another thing is how can you be a Trump supporter and have you watch these January 6 people all locked up in prison for years or held in the DC County Jail with the feds crawling so far in their lives that they're like bankrupt from legal fees, and think that you would want to participate in this again? Or how would you want to be one of his lawyers to try and help execute this when every single one of those people ends up pleading guilty in a court of law? Like, all of the incentive structure for a J6 2.0, I don't see it as existing. And look, that's just cope, maybe on my behalf, but I'm just like, I don't see how it can happen again.
I mean, in certain respects, yes, because like I said, he doesn't control the federal government.
He literally is
That's the main difference. That doesn't mean there isn't a lot of trouble that he could cause. And, you know, I understand too why people, the people that interviewed at the New York Times say, I don't really take him seriously. Like, he chanted lock her up and then he didn't lock her up and all of that. But he did incite January 6th, and he did go to great lengths to actually overturn the results of the election. I mean, that's just a fact. The fake elector slates that his own people were referring to as fake, being offered in different states, pressuring Mike Pence with everything he could to not certify the election. Picking J.D. Vance, I think, as his vice president, primarily because J.D. Vance said, I would have done what Mike Pence wouldn't do last time around. And so, you have a man that his supporters really don't trust anyone but him. If he says this was rigged and stolen and, they're doing it again and take your country back and whatever, I don't want to underestimate, especially when he's out making comments like this, sort of setting things up for that. I don't want to underestimate what that could look like and what it could do for the country. I mean, I think you even acknowledged, like, oh, yeah, the possibility of violence is real. I'm not saying there's any guarantees here, but I do think because we are heading for such a razor-thin election, if he loses, I do think it could be another extraordinarily difficult and ugly time in American politics. So that's all I'd say about that is, like, yeah, he didn't follow through on all of his talk, but you can't underestimate him when January 6th and the fake electors and all of that stuff really did happen. And of course, we also know how much of a freak out there would be if, like, Kamala Harris said something similar about calling out the National Guard and the U.S. military to deal with her political opponents, which is what he said. And by the way, they are seizing on these comments on the trail and talking about.
Oh yeah, they're look. Yeah. By the way, do I think it helps Trump? No. I mean, dude, it's like, yeah, let's talk about this whenever a bunch of people specifically rejected you and your style of stop the steal candidates all across all the swing states. So maybe that's a little bit of a problem. I wouldn't be talking this way. I don't see JD talking this way. He doesn't even bring up the election unless he's pressed on it 5 times.
You don't see JD talking this way. I'm sorry. Like, lest we forget.
For most of America's political and media wise, but my real disagreement is with Kamala Harris, with the way that she's led the country, with some of her views and some.
In the debate, you were asked to clarify if you believe Trump lost the 2020 election. Do you believe he lost the 2020 election?
I think that.
So Sagar just said that JD Vance doesn't talk that way, and indeed, he's not going to use the same words that Donald Trump does. He is more intelligent than Donald Trump, right? He's a better speaker than Donald Trump. So he's not going to go about it in the same way. But does JD Vance kind of say the same thing? I mean, he definitely won't contradict Trump on this issue. Watch him twist himself into all kinds of pretzels to avoid saying the obvious thing that Trump lost the fucking 2020 election.
Trump and I have.
And there's a reason that Sagar is, going to be sweeping for JD Vance. That the two of them are friends, apparently. This is his celebrity friend.
Both raised a number of issues with the 2020 election, but we're focused on the future. I think there's an obsession here with focusing on 2020. I'm much more worried about what happened after 2020, which is a wide open border, groceries that are unaffordable. And look,
Senator, yes or no? Okay. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Let me ask you a question. Is it okay?
I'm not going to address the question. Let me ask you a question instead. Is it okay if I deflect?
Technology companies censored the Hunter Biden laptop story, which independent analysis have said it cost Donald Trump millions of votes.
Senator Vance, I'm going to ask you again. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Did big technology companies censor a story that independent studies have suggested would have cost Trump millions of votes?
Can you imagine any other candidate like John Kerry, right, lost the election to George W. Bush in 2004? Can you imagine John Kerry coping about the fucking Swift boat thing? Right? Blaming his loss which actually there's probably a better case to be made that if you don't know, Swift boats were John Kerry was in Vietnam. His big sort of claim to fame as far as a presidential candidate to go against George W. Bush is that he was an actual Vietnam veteran. George Bush was never deployed and was in a special unit that would not be deployed to Vietnam. John Kerry actually fought in Vietnam. So, they sort of bring out John Kerry as like, hey, here's a guy that is a veteran. You can trust him as a military president, as a war president, but he understands what it's like to be a soldier, and he's not going to throw our soldiers' lives away like maybe George W. Bush is, right? That was the whole appeal of John Kerry. And then they brought out there was a documentary that interviewed a bunch of people that had served in Vietnam and didn't like the fact that John Kerry had gone more liberal after the war and made up a bunch of stories about him, calling him a coward and all this other stuff and disputing his military record, right? So that Swift Boat Veterans for Truth, right? That was actually a PAC. That was actually a political action commission. John Kerry could legitimately say that might have lost him that might have lost him the election. J.D. Vance answering the question of, do you think that Donald Trump do you agree with Donald Trump that he won the election, right? Him answering with well, he's basically saying, yes, I do agree. And here's how I think it was. I think that it's unfair that they didn't do the Hunter Biden New York Post story. I think it's unfair that we didn't see Hunter's penis plastered all over all media, because that would have totally changed the vote, right? That would have, there was never any connection to Biden with Hunter. There was never anything that really implicated Biden in corruption, to the point where the Republicans started to impeach Biden and they stopped because the evidence just wasn't there, right? But J.D. Vance is trying to cope that this Hunter Biden story would have changed the outcome of the election. And even though it ended up being a nothing burger, that if it was just introduced to the American people with a possibility, with a spin on it, that maybe this indicates there's some corruption by Joe Biden by means of his drug addict son, right? That would be, this is the worst kind of cope.
Senator Vance, I'm going to ask you again, did Donald Trump lose the 2020
election? And I've answered
election?
your question with another question. You answer my question and I'll answer yours.
I have asked this question repeatedly.
He thinks he's smart.
It is something that is very important for the American people to know. There is no proof, legal or otherwise, that Donald Trump did not lose the 2020 election.
You're repeating a slogan rather than engaging with what I'm saying, which is that when our own technology firms engage in industrial scale censorship, by the way, backed up by the federal government, in a way that independent studies suggest.
J.D. Vance, you don't get to say anything about you're doing something rather than answering the question, because you're not answering the question. You were asked a question first. You've been asked a question by multiple people. You refuse to answer that question. But if you actually read the tea leaves in what he's saying, he is giving an answer. He just doesn't want to say it in a clippable way. He's never going to say, yes, I think that Donald Trump would have been the rightful winner of the 2020 election, and he was right to dispute it, and he was right to tell Mike Pence to steal the election for him, and that was all. And if I was Mike Pence, I would have fucking done it, right? He's not going to say that, but what he is going to say is that he's pointing to what he thinks was a theft of the election. So whereas nothing that the Trump administration brought to court was taken seriously, was any sort of a serious, allegation of electoral impropriety, whereas none of that panned out at all, he's now moving the goalpost again to say, well, what about the Hunter Biden thing? The Hunter Biden thing. Many independent firms say that if the Hunter Biden thing was introduced into the media cycle and not debunked and not fact-checked in any way, that maybe Americans would have voted against Biden. And so yeah, Donald Trump did win it because we didn't get that Hunter Biden story. That's what he's saying. But he's saying it in such a fucking convoluted way that there's no way to clip it down into a 5-second, 10-second, 15-second thing to be able to kind of spread that, right? And this is why I say that J.D. Vance is smarter than Trump, and he's a better speaker than Trump, because he knows that thing cannot be said, whereas Donald Trump will straight up say, they stole the election, we had the most votes of anyone ever, and they took the election, it was unfair.
Just affect the votes. I'm worried about Americans who feel like there were problems in 2020. I'm not worried about this slogan that people throw. Well, every court case went this way. I'm talking about something very discreet.
a slogan everybody throws at me. Well, there's actually no fucking facts on your side. And in fact, this shit was analyzed in a court of law and thrown the fuck out time after time. But no, that's just a slogan. I'm sorry. I'm just sloganeering. I'll shut up.
Censorship in this country that I do think affected things in 2020, and more importantly, that led to Kamala Harris's governance, which has screwed this country up in a big way.
Senator, would you have certified the election in 2020? Yes or no?
I've said that I would have voted against certification because of the concern that I just raised. I think that when you have technology companies—
The answer is no.
When you have technology companies censoring Americans at a mass scale in a way that, again, independent studies have suggested affect the vote, I think that it's right to protest against that, to criticize that, and that's a totally reasonable thing.
So the answer is no. And the last question, will you support the election results this time and commit to a peaceful transfer of power?
Well, first of all, of course we commit to a peaceful transfer of power. We are going to have a peaceful transfer.
You don't have the choice now. You don't have the choice, right? You don't have the ability, like, I mean, unless he's just going to straight up, like, march on the White House and try to, you know, insert Trump or something like that. Like, right, it's not the situation that it was before, where Trump was, you know, and this is why the first point that Crystal brought up was kind of boneheaded, right? It's not really the gist of what she's trying to get at. The idea that Donald Trump is going to do what he did in 2021, because again, he does not have power. So this whole peaceful transfer of power thing is less of an issue. What's more of an issue is Trump trying to provoke civil unrest via refusing to accept the results of the election.
I, of course, believe that peaceful transfer of power is going to make Donald Trump the next president of the United States. But if there are problems, of course, in the same way that Democrats protested in 2004 and Donald Trump raised issues in 2020, we're going to make sure—
Democrats didn't protest in 2004. John Kerry conceded the election, I believe, the night of.
That this election counts, that every legal ballot is counted. We've filed almost—
What he's talking about is that there were some stories about, I don't know, voting machines, right? Where people were talking about like voting machine irregularities, but that's not a story of Democrats trying to overturn the result of the election, right? The Democratic establishment, the Democratic candidates accepted their loss to George W. Bush.
100 lawsuits at the RNC to try to ensure that every legal ballot has counted. I think you would maybe criticize that. We see that as an important effort to ensure election integrity, but certainly we're going to respect the results in 2024, and I feel very confident they're going to make Donald Trump the next president. Pushing back a little bit more aggressive.
Okay, so this is a whole ass interview. The New York Times decided not to list the name of the fucking— I'm trying to remember her name. Lulu, oh my god, I can't remember her name. Regardless, let's get back to Crystal and Sagar. And that's Sagar's friend, and that's why he's talking about him in that way. That's why he's pretending that JD Vance is not every bit the fucking ass clown that Donald Trump is, only maybe wrapped in better words.
Interview maybe sounds smart to me, but look, it's Trump and he can decide what he wants to do. Look, first of all, if he wins, it's not an issue, right? So there you go. He'll take power, he's too termed out, and then it's over. In terms of the loss, all of the stuff that they tried to do last time is now either illegal, has been prosecuted, or the policy has changed. Can he try and incite, I wouldn't even say incite, can he try and have rallies and all that? Yes, certainly. But again, if you are so dumb to go to a Trump rally protesting the election and then break into the Capitol, honestly, then you deserve to go to jail again, because you literally watched what happened to the first time around. So there seems to be a lot of incentives in play here where, again, maybe I'm Pollyanna. People can roll this clip back on January 6th next year around, but I'm optimistic. I don't think it's going to be that bad.
So we also have Mike Flynn, who of course was a member of Trump's previous administration, forced out, resigned under some scandals, basically like caught being a foreign agent. He was asked a question about potentially not just draining the swamp, but executing the swamp, to great applause from the supporters in the room. Let's take a listen to how that went.
Is there any chance that should the election go in a positive result, you would get your rank reinstated and sit at the head of a military tribunal to not only drain the swamp, but imprison the swamp, and on a few occasions, execute the swamp?
Your sentiment is like a lot of people that I speak to around this country, and for years now, for the last 4 years of my life, I've been around this country, all over the country. I've been to over 100 cities, just, doing my thing, which is basically telling the American people, you better wake up here, folks. There's no more, well, we're going to go through just another election. All these elections are the same. But what your sentiment is about is accountability, okay? Accountability. And these people are already up to no good. So we got to win first. We win, And then Katie barred the door.
Do you hear what he's saying? He's saying, I'm not going to speak to what you're talking about as far as executing the swamp. The first thing we need to do is win. And when we win, and he's just winking. He's just winking. This is a QAnon guy. This was a guy that was in Trump's administration early on and actually went to jail, I believe, because of a conflict of interest with him being like a foreign agent for Turkey or something. And then I think he was I believe he was pardoned by Trump, right? So Sagar's going to say like Michael Flynn, that's got nothing to do with the Trump administration. But this is the exact kind of guy that was like, for Trump's initial impulse was dudes like Flynn. When they got in trouble, Trump distanced himself. But then, when he got disenchanted with the adults in the room that were part of his cabinet, he's been more and more about guys like this. And yeah, Michael Flynn being a QAnon guy is going to be loyal to a fault.
Okay.
So no, this is the exact kind of guy that you would expect to find in a 2.0 version of the Trump administration.
Believe me, the gates of hell, my hell, will be unleashed.
Look,
Your
again,
thoughts on that,
I think
Tucker?
people seize on this stuff. Mike Flynn has no connection to the campaign. He was fired after 33 days or whatever as a national security advisor. I believe I need to make sure exactly what happened here, but he either pled guilty or he had some situation with the foreign agent stuff that happened at that time. Yeah, it was. I covered it so much at the time. It was something like Gulen and Erdogan. He basically has made a career of like QAnon style adjacent like events and like bankrolling himself since then. So I'm not worried about this. I don't think that Mike Flynn speaks with any authority whatsoever.
But is what he's saying that different from what Trump has been saying? Because Trump is saying, like, I will be your retribution and calling out the National Guard.
Okay, let's get this since Breaking Point can't seem to get this together. In July 2016, Flynn spoke to a meeting of ACT for America when the 2016 Turkish coup d'etat attempt against Turkish President Erdogan was underway. He spoke favorably of the coup participants, saying Erdogan. Oh, so it wasn't of Erdogan; it was of the coup, which I think was an American-backed coup, if I have that correctly. He's the national security advisor. Oh, wait, no, was his scandal with the Russian government departure? On February 9th, 2017, the Washington Post broke the story that Flynn had discussed U.S. Sanctions with Kislyak, that's the Russian official, contrary to public denials made by the Trump administration, citing 9 current or former officials. The New York Times confirmed the story by the Washington Post, stating that a transcript of the Flynn-Kislyak conversation existed. The Washington Post also reported that on February 8th, Flynn had given them flat denials about such discussions. Flynn gave denials despite the Washington Post journalist Karen D. Young informing him that officials had listened to intercepts of his conversation with Kislyak. On February 13th, Flynn resigned as national security advisor, writing that he had given incomplete information on the conversations with Kislyak. Investigation after leaving the Trump administration. He made a plea on December 1, 2017. Flynn and special counsel Robert Mueller agreed to a plea bargain in the District of Columbia's U.S. District Court. In the agreement, Flynn pleaded guilty to willfully and knowingly making false, fictitious, and fraudulent statements to the FBI regarding conversations with Russia's ambassador, that's Kislyak. Flynn agreed that in the statement of offense that he had falsely denied that on December 29th of 2016, he had asked Russia's ambassador to the United States, Kislyak, to refrain from escalating in response to sanctions that the United States had imposed on Russia on the same day. Flynn's guilty plea acknowledged that he was cooperating with the Mueller investigation, right? So he's cooperating with Mueller. Flynn's sentencing had been deferred several times. So the sentencing gets delayed. Yeah, presidential pardon. Presidential pardon. Right? Flynn's in all this kind of trouble. He's talking to Mueller. He's made a plea deal, right? Trump gives him a pardon.
And the military. I mean, it seems pretty consistent with the sentiments that Trump himself is expressing.
I mean, in terms of I will be your retribution, he said that last time around. And what did it look like? Mostly like firing people like Mike Flynn and it not working out so well. To the extent that it would be nice is if, hey, we actually did fire a bunch of people on the side of the CIA.
I hate how assholes like Sagar can memory hole the fucking terror of the Trump administration. I hate how they can do that. I hate how they can act like, hey, nothing bad happened. What do you mean nothing bad happened? The planet wasn't blown up? Is that what you fucking mean? What is your standard for nothing fucking happened? The United States lost a huge amount of status in the world as far as being taken seriously. The Trump administration was a huge step backwards. You know, important pieces of diplomatic work like the nuclear agreement with Iran were blown up, were rescinded, right? What do you mean nothing bad happened?
And the FBI, I don't think that's so bad. I guess it's, you know,
like an American citizen was extrajudicially assassinated in, I believe, Washington State. What do you mean nothing bad happened?
It's about degrees, and it's about which and how you interpret like what that looks like and what's extreme or whatever's not. Like,
you had federal law enforcement abducting American protesters. What the fuck do you mean nothing happened?
To me, I think Schedule F is a great idea. I think half of these people more than half of these people should be fired. Is that what Mike Flynn is talking about? No. And that's another thing.
He's talking about 2025, right? When he says Schedule F, that's what he means, right? The part of Project 2025 that addresses getting rid of civil servants and replacing them with Trump sycophants to make sure that there's no one who gets in the way of Trump's dictator on day one bullshit.
Thing too, where if you have to point to his track record.
When you say that gates of hell are going to be unleashed, or I'll be arrested,
but he's not,
I'll call out the National Guard or the military should deal with my political opponents. That's not about Schedule F.
No, but he says this shit all the time. How much of it actually happened? I was there when Trump was like, I'm going to take military funding and build the border.
That makes it better that he says it all the time.
And then shut down the government for 3
That makes it better.
And then caved to Nancy Pelosi.
If he only said it once or twice, it'd be. If anyone else said this, end of political career. They're done. They're cooked. If anyone else said this. But because Trump's got the ability to be treated with kid gloves by the media, because Trump's given so much, grace, so much benefit of the doubt, he's judged by such a lower bar. It's okay. It's okay. He says it. It's okay. He says this kind of thing all the time.
In practice, how does this shit actually work? Like, most of the time, it doesn't usually work out to his benefit. It turns out that...
Yeah, that's right, Snaxina. The bad things didn't happen, so it's all gravy.
There are decent checks and balances.
It's all gravy.
Look, we could play the next part here, and this is probably more consequential. From J.D. Vance, when he was asked about who the most consequential part of the government will be, he said the Attorney General. Let's take a listen.
On the Attorney General, you said on Friday that the most important person in government in a Trump-Vance administration, other than the president, is not you. It would be the Attorney General. Why do you consider that the most important spot, the second most important spot?
Well, one reason, Martha, is just public opinion. And what I mean here is that we really want the American people to believe that we have a fair and equitable administration of justice. If not, the entire sort of system falls apart. You need people to believe that if the Attorney General prosecutes somebody, it's motivated by justice and law and not by politics. And unfortunately,
would Donald Trump go after his political opponents? Would Donald Trump go after his political opponents? He suggested that in the past.
Martha, he was president for 4 years, and he didn't go after his political opponents. You know who did go after her political opponents? Kamala Harris, who has tried to arrest everything from pro-life activists to her political opponents.
He said those people who cheated will be prosecuted
as a weapon against people. Well, he said that people who violate...
Yeah, Donald Trump only extrajudicially assassinated people, right? He didn't go after his political enemies.
Our election laws will be prosecuted. I think that's the
Yeah, go tell Reality Winner that.
administration of law. He didn't say people are going to go to jail because they disagree with me. That has in fact been the administration and the policy of Kamala Harris, Martha.
I mean, you know, a lot of people looked at
He literally did. He started the fucking lock her up thing, but whatever.
said he was going to prosecute. I think look, this is much more bureaucratic. It's about having somebody who, you know, rules that a certain program or whatever can be legal, because a lot of that comes back to like how you interpret certain bureaucratic actions. The shutdown thing I just talked about was a good example. Trump used some legal maneuvers to make sure that he had executive authority to try and divert fundings toward a border wall. That's the way that I looked at it, especially with the whole Merrick Garland thing. I understand this whole prosecute political opponents and stuff, but I mean, Trump is the one who was indicted by the Biden administration. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know why it's supposed to be so scary to watch this clip. It seems entirely consistent with the view of what went wrong with the previous Trump administration.
Well,
this feels like gaslighting.
I think it's because of the things that Trump's been saying, which is, you know, he posted on Truth Social, when I win, those people that cheated will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences so that the depravity of justice does not happen again. He added those involved in unscrupulous behavior will be sought out, caught, and prosecuted at levels unfortunately never seen before in our country. So, you know, it's very—
And remember, this is the guy that went out after election workers in Georgia.
To just like sort of dismiss anything that he says that goes too far. But I don't think that you can fairly do that at this point, given what we saw after the last election. And so that's where the J.D. Vance comments come in, is like, okay, now you have not just Trump like mouthing off on Truth Social, you have J.D. Vance affirmatively saying like, you know, the attorney general, who would be the person going after these people, locking them up or whatever, is the second most important person in government. You got Michael Flynn, who was a close associate, you know, talking about these things. And you've got Trump himself, you know, making multiple comments, not just the one that I just, that we played before, talked about before with regard to the National Guard and military. But he said he'd purge the government of non-loyalists. He said that there would be one really violent day when police officers could get extraordinarily rough with impunity. You know, he's talked about mass deportations that would be a cold, bloody story. And it's very convenient.
Sagar is laughing.
To just dismiss all of the things that are like uncomfortable and embrace the ones that you happen to like, especially at this point, again, maybe before January 6th and all the fake electors crap and, you know, the like actual plans that we know at this point were hatched and rejected to try to seize voting machines and all this stuff. But I just don't think you can hand wave it away at this point the way that previously perhaps it would be
maybe. I mean,
to.
do I take it like very, very seriously? No. Look, maybe I'm naive. I believe mostly in the American system. The Attorney General genuinely did try to bring, under Donald Trump, tried to have—
Wait, do you?
Grand jury in Washington, D.C. indict people for, for voter fraud based on Venezuelan dominion. I just simply believe that wouldn't happen, or it wouldn't go through the justice system, even if Trump wanted it to go through. So sure, the Attorney General can try. In terms of practice, like, how do I—
That's wild that he would say that after the Supreme Court has given this guy unlimited pass to commit crimes, right? To say, I feel like the institutions of our country, what he's saying is the checks and balances. Like, that's the most sensible interpretation, right? Because Sagar, remember, is supposed to be an anti-establishment guy. So it's not like he's saying, I believe in the establishment. It's not like he's saying, I believe in the power of the, you know, the Washington consensus. This guy's against the Washington consensus. But he must mean then that checks and balances, that the, you know, that the Senate is there to impeach Trump if he breaks the law. No, it's not. The Senate is under Trump's thumb, right? You need a insane majority in the Senate in order to hold a president accountable. And as long as the Republican senators are beholden to Trump, you don't have that. So one of the checks and balances is out. Legislative's not going to do shit to Trump. What about judicial? Oh shit, that's right. He was allowed to name 3 Supreme Court justices who then reversed Roe versus Wade and essentially gave him this unitary executive privilege that anything that he does that's an official act, it doesn't matter if it's a crime. He's allowed to commit crime. And you don't, and you somehow you think that there's what's going to check Trump? What's going to check Trump? Because like, right, there's 3 branches of government. They're supposed to be co-equal. They're supposed to have separations of power, and they're supposed to provide checks and balances on each other. So not one of these branches gets out of control. But the judicial branch is already out of control. The executive branch under Trump is definitely out of control. And there's no way the legislative branch is going to do shit to check that power. What is going to save us? There's no guardrails left. There's no guardrails left.
I think he means it. What I just talked about in terms of legal opinion, let's make sure, for example, that we want to change the way that we take census data, that we do it properly so the Supreme Court doesn't strike us down, and make sure that it goes down because of a legal error. Literally, by the way, that's what happened under the first Trump administration. So I think the system works mostly fine. In terms of what the opinion is or whatever, is there a risk?
Omega Star says, I'm tired of people telling me, I'm overreacting. That's why I love you all so much. Aw.
Certainly. I guess I just think what those people mostly expressed here, it's like, how seriously are you really supposed to take it completely literally? In the way I just laid out, I don't think you can take it completely literally.
But like January 6th doesn't change your assessment of that at all.
Considering that the law has changed, no. I mean, sorry, yeah, actually, yeah, because the law has changed so significantly. If you had asked me under the previous regime, I'd be like, yeah, I'm actually a lot more worried. But because the law changed with the bipartisan Electoral Count Act, I'm like, not really. Not the way that it currently is. It's physically impossible for them to try and do what they did last time around.
You're just considering like the specifics of what happened last time around. If he's back as president of the United States and all of the powers that entails, you know, he could cause a lot of trouble. There's a lot of things that he could do that wouldn't look exactly like January 6th. And I'm just arguing.
But he wouldn't do that because he'd be a two-term for president.
I'm just arguing. I'm not even talking specifically about like stealing the election again or whatever. My whole point is that I don't think at this point, given what we've seen from him, that you can just hand wave away as, oh, like, he doesn't really mean it. Because in the past, we've seen him mean it, and we've seen him cause a lot of trouble based on following through on the, you know, over-the-top rhetoric that he's used in the past. So that's it. That's my whole point is I don't think that it's fair or honest to just, you know, hand wave away anything that he says that is like,
I wouldn't hand wave it away, but some of the things you listed, for example, some of the things you listed, I'm like, that sounds pretty good. Purging the government of non-loyalists, that sounds great, actually. I think the president should be in charge, for example, of national security.
He said he wouldn't hire anyone who admits the 2020 election wasn't stolen. That's what he means by that. That's what he means by loyalty, is you have to be willing to lie and say the election was stolen and do literally whatever I say, no matter how outrageous or fraudulent it ultimately is. He doesn't mean like you're going to stand by my tariff policy.
We have no evidence of that. He's not currently in power.
No, because he literally said, I won't hire anyone who admits the 2020 election wasn't stolen. So that's the evidence. It's his own words.
Then we'll have a very, very small pool to choose from, and they're welcome to do that and pursue that policy if they want to. And they will be able to hire maybe like 5 people. Like, that's what I mean. Maybe if he really does that, then he's an idiot, and then people shouldn't vote for him. You can decide for yourself. That's what I'm saying. I'm giving my assessment of how I would look at it. Mass deportation, yeah. The libs are going to fight tooth and nail. Every Catholic charity and all these people are going to sue with some fake.
The libs are going to fight tooth and nail? They've already caved. They've already caved to Trump on immigration.
To make it so, yeah, I support mass deportation. I want an attorney general that will make sure that that was legally executed. So it's one of those where what you think is radical, I think is actually necessary. And probably vice versa, too, in terms of what, legalizing weed?
One really violent day in which police officers could get extraordinarily rough with impunity.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that...
Wait, where's the weed coming from? What is the weed? What?
That's what I'm saying. I'm giving my assessment of how I would look at it. Mass deportation, yeah. The libs are going to fight tooth and nail. Every Catholic charity and all these people are going to sue with some fake Hawaii judge to make it so, yeah, I support mass deportation. I want an attorney general that will make sure that that was legally executed.
With some fake Hawaii judge?
So it's one of those where what you think...
No, I'm sorry, Sagar. Hawaii's a state. It's not fake.
Radical, I think is actually necessary.
Hawaii is very real.
And probably vice versa, too, in terms of what, legalizing weed?
One really violent day in which police officers could get extraordinarily rough with impunity.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that that's not legal or even probably like
calling out the military against your political opponents.
Again, I don't think that that's legal. It's never happened before. Let's think about when's the last time that it happened.
Sagar, I just think that there's a real double standard.
So Sagar's saying that any president with fucking violent inclinations, with dictatorial inclinations, is totally all right because he thinks the guardrails are in place where that could never happen. It can't happen here. It can't happen here, right?
In the way that you analyze his words versus the words of, you know, literally any Democratic politician.
I mean, I guess it just comes back to when we have
You don't believe him.
In my mind, the cops are, the law enforcement in this country is already predisposed towards authoritarian action. And the only thing that's really stopping them is that they don't have some kind of a, you know, pass from someone up on high, like the president, right?
Yeah, I actually just don't believe it'll happen. No, I
believe the ones that you like, and you say those ones will happen. But the ones I don't like, I'm just gonna pretend those didn't happen.
That if he could do it, I think that he would. But I believe in the American system enough to say that most of the shit's not going to happen regardless. Okay. That's what I think. I think that if he could do it, he would. I also think Democrats would do a lot of the stuff that they would. They literally indicted Trump. I mean, they indicted him under January 6th.
Committed crimes.
Huh? I mean, again, that's a pretty subjective way of looking at it.
That's not subjective. There's the law. Things that violate the law are crimes. He committed the crimes. Merrick Garland waited like, I don't know, 3 years and then started forward some of the federal prosecutions. The Southern District of New York was a little quicker on that. Georgia's, you know, Fani Willis proceeded with her case, but, you know, kind of got stymied by some of her own actions with coworkers, right? No, this is not the Biden administration prosecuting its fucking political enemies. This is Merrick Garland sitting on his thumbs for 3 years and then finally getting off his ass and like, okay, I guess I better, I mean, he did steal the documents. I better investigate that. He did, you know.
I don't think it would be all that easy. I just think, first of all, that probably, you know, punctures a little bit.
They also indicted Hunter Biden and Bob Menendez and Eric Adams. So.
I mean, to Hunter Biden, it took, what, 5 years?
NSC says you cannot prosecute a sitting president either. That's what I was just saying, yeah. There's no check on Trump's power this time, right? The judicial branch has shown that it's in the tank for him, the legislative branch would need a massive majority on the part of the Democrats and a massive majority that had the balls to actually go through with holding Trump accountable. That's not going to happen, right? Those are the two other branches of government, the two other co-equal branches of government. That means that there is no effective check or balance on Donald Trump were he to get back in the White House.
To the bringing it into media story to actually get him charged. If he was any normal citizen, he would have been charged like a decade ago. So I don't think that's particularly a great example.
Bob Menendez, Eric Adams.
Bob Menendez was indicted previously, skipped the charge, and the only reason he got indicted is because he's so cartoonishly corrupt. Now, I'm not saying it isn't a good thing. I support that. I think all corrupt people should be prosecuted. I'm trying to answer the
What about Eric Adams?
question very honestly, which is, yeah, I think if he could do it, he would. But I don't think that he can with the American system. That's pretty.
For some reason, a lot of Republicans have been standing Eric Adams lately. Eric Adams they're pretending like he's a truth sayer. He's a truth teller that the Biden administration's trying to silence.
In a certain sense, that's what a lot of those people in the New York Times people
instead of a corrupt foreign actor.
New York Times profile were saying too.
So you trust the institutions?
Mostly. I mean, they've been stress tested, by and large. Have there been some slippage? I guess you could say yes, certainly. But if you look at it and the way that most of this stuff, especially the most egregious, like if you wanted to call out, the military to prosecute your political opponents, like you have to really think about how the level of chain of command and number of people who would have to go along with that to actually happen. Now, would he do that if he wanted to? Maybe he would. I don't know. But it's one of those where if you look also,
I don't want to find out.
Type of people who are in charge of the military, you have his old chief of staff, General Mark Milley, being like, I think he's a fascist. So do you think that the person who replaced him, who's basically a clone, would he execute an order like that?
Oh yeah, Omega Star. This is Nixon's dream.
I don't really think so.
So if Kamala Harris came out and said, I'm going to potentially use the military to go after my political opponents, or the military should go after my political opponents, you'd be like, the system will allow it.
Oh no, I would be like, yeah, I think that's kind of crazy. I also don't think that it would happen. I mean, don't you think that that's like a rational response? Like, again, do we think that the military would obey that order?
I don't think that you would be as sanguine about it if it was from a politician like Kamala Harris or Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton or whoever. I don't think you would just be like, the system on hold, so whatever, it's fine.
I wouldn't say whatever. I think a lot of this is baked in with Trump. And this is also, look, I mean, this is a difficult position, right?
It is baked in with Trump, that is true.
Americans are stuck in a two-party system. It's very difficult. What are we supposed to do? I mean, you're in a scenario where if you disagree with somebody on 40%, but you agree on 60, you should probably vote for the 60. I didn't design a system. I think it's bad. It's one of those two where you have to really weigh a lot of checks and balances about things that you maybe very, very viciously object to, or even think about and then think about what the overall direction of the ship or whatever is going to point. Why may have.
All right, so we pretty much got the gist of this argument. From what I've heard, Sagar kind of got it in the comments. Like, usually they go after Crystal. Sagar, they indicted Trump. Crystal, he committed crimes. Sagar, well, that's a pretty subjective way to look at it, yeah. You always tell where Sagar doesn't believe what he's saying. He laughs uncomfortably and says, it's just politics, or talks in circles. Admitting if Trump could set the military on his political opponents, he would, but I don't think he can. Still supporting Trump is bonkers. I used to think Sagar was a moderate conservative, but his response to this segment shows he's really not. She made him look like a clown. Wow, this is like pretty unambiguous here. Trump supporters take him seriously, but not literally. Trump opponents take him literally, but not seriously. Wait, what? Sagar, I think all corrupt people should be prosecuted. They prosecuted Trump. Crystal, Trump was prosecuted because he committed crimes. Sagar, I think Trump would commit crimes if he could, but our system will hold. It's no big deal. Sagar literally talking in circles. His cognitive dissonance has broken his brain. Yeah, so anyway, there we go. That's the debate between Sagar and Jetty and Crystal Ball. He is well, I mean, like, it reminds me of like almost every single interview with JD Vance, right? It's very similar to the kind of circles that JD Vance talks his way into. There's one other person that this kind of reminds me of too. I don't want to belabor this too much. I wasn't going to watch this, but if I can find it, I will. I can't find it, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, Glenn Youngkin gets caught in kind of the same trap, actually defending JD Vance in a very Vancian or Ingedian sort of way. Let's go to some of the Trump tent for today.
Maybe we can change the subject to technology, seeing you wouldn't answer about the Federal Reserve. The US Justice Department is thinking about breaking up Alphabet, as Google likes to be known now. Should Google be broken up?
I just haven't gotten over something the Justice Department did yesterday, where Virginia cleaned up its voter rolls and got rid of thousands and thousands of bad votes, and the Justice Department sued them that they should be allowed to put those bad votes and illegal votes back in and let the people vote. So I haven't gotten over that. A lot of people have seen that. They can't even believe it.
The question is about Google, President Trump.
Yeah.
He literally didn't ask about that, but do you see what happened here? Let's go back and I'll show you exactly where we went off the rails.
You wouldn't answer about the Federal Reserve. The US Justice Department is thinking about
So the US Justice Department,
breaking up Alphabet, as Google likes to be known now. Should Google be broken up?
so we're talking about, like, is Google a monopoly, right? Should it be broken up? That's the question. But because he mentioned the Department of Justice, here's what we get.
I just haven't gotten over something the Justice Department did yesterday, where Virginia cleaned up its voter rolls and got rid of thousands and thousands of bad votes, and the Justice Department sued.
So he asked him about the Justice Department and Google and the monopoly charge, right? And instead, Trump wants to talk about his own fucking grievance. Now, this is both a sign of narcissism, a sign of being self-focused, right? If you're going to bring up the Justice Department, Trump doesn't want to talk, or maybe doesn't know what's going on with Google, and instead wants to talk about his own pet peeve of what the Justice Department is doing. In other words, preventing Virginia from throwing people off the voting roll.
Them that they should be allowed to put those bad votes and illegal votes back in and let the people vote.
Those bad votes and illegal votes. So in other words, he's worried that too many people are going to vote. Just like I'm worried that too many people are going to get themselves a sub to get out of the top of the hour ad break, and then Twitch will not be advertising to anyone, right? You can get out of that ad break for free with a Twitch Prime sub. You can get out of that ad break for $6 with $6. Or possibly, if you're lucky enough, you might be gifted a sub, although that sort of luck, more likely to happen if you're active in the chat.
So I haven't gotten over that. A lot of people have seen that. They can't even believe it.
The question is about...
Yeah, you definitely haven't gotten over that. That much is clear.
Yeah,
he's like, I'm totally not asking you about what you just said. I'm asking you about a completely different topic, which you've completely ignored.
Google's got a lot of power. They're very bad to me. Very, very bad to me. I mean,
and it's all about Trump. It's all about Trump again. And look, this might be just a sign of Trump having a very narcissistic type of personality. Or, you know, some of this stuff kind of lines up with signs of cognitive decline.
They only have bad stories.
I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to diagnose him, but you make up your own mind whether you think that this guy is cognitively able to perform as president of the United States, any more so than Joe Biden.
If I have 20 good stories and 20 bad stories, and everyone's entitled to that, you'll only see the 20 bad stories. And I called the head of Google the other day, and I said, I'm getting a lot of good stories lately, but you don't find them in Google. I think it's a whole rigged deal. I think Google's rigged.
Okay, so first pass, he talks about the Justice Department not letting Virginia throw people's voter registration out, right? That's really what he's complaining about, right? Virginia wanted to throw out voter registration for people to make it harder for them to vote, but then the Justice Department stepped in and stopped them from doing that. I think that sucks, right? Ask him again. Oh, Google treats me very badly. And on any day, there's like, 40 stories, 20 of them are about me are good, 20 of them are bad. And when I go to Google News, all I see is the bad ones.
Just like our government is rigged all over the place.
It's rigged. The news is rigged. Everything is rigged. This guy's being gang stalked. This guy's being persecuted. He's the ultimate martyr.
I do something, but you have to have, look.
He's the ultimate victim.
I give him a lot of credit. They become such a power. It's such a power, and you got to give him credit for that.
He's not talking about the question that's being asked.
At the same time, it's a very dangerous thing.
He's doing the weave. He's doing the weave again. All right, so now we've got to talk about Donald Trump's appearance on I believe it was called a women's town hall with Harris. Oh my God, what's up? What is her name? from Fox News, Harris Faulkner. So we're not going to watch all of this because it would get very boring. It is very much like a circle jerk. While the audience, I guess, is made up of women, this is not a discussion primarily of women's issues or anything like that. It's it's just Trump trying to like win back a demographic that he's doing really badly with.
I want to talk about IVF. I'm the father.
You don't hear that every day.
I'm the father of IVF.
He's the father of IVF.
Alabama judge had ruled that the IVF clinics were illegal and they have to be closed down. I said, no, we're totally in favor of IVF.
So anyway, the Alabama judges wouldn't have been able to do shit if it wasn't for his Supreme Court picks, his Federalist Society Supreme Court picks, which enabled what I would call what looks to me to be like a judicial coup on the United States, and has just gotten worse and worse. You've got an incredibly illegitimate Supreme Court, a lot of not just signs, not just the appearance of conflict of interest, but like almost undeniable conflict of interest. You've got, the ability for, in the instance of many of these Supreme Court justices taking very lavish gifts to people who have issues in front of the court. And last but not least, the interpretation of law that it says that the president has essentially immunity as long as he's in, immunity from the law as long as he's doing an official act of his office.
We are the party for IVF. We want fertilization, and it's all the way. And the Democrats tried to attack us on it, and we're out there on IVF even more than them.
Facing the question of abortion, why is the government involved in women's basic rights?
The states are now voting.
Because he picked the Supreme Court justices. And this was a long-term plan of the Federalist Society.
And honestly, some of them are going much more liberal, like in Ohio. I would have thought it might
Some of
be
them
a
are
little
not.
bit different. And some of them are not, but it's going to be redone. It's going to be redone. It's
going to be redone?
Davy Cliff super chatted $19.99. The father of IVF is terrifying.
It really is. It really is. It does scare me. That's not the worst of it, though. That's not the worst of it. I saved the worst for last.
End up with a vote of the people. And some of them I agree. They're too tough. Too tough.
Thanks for the super chat, Davy.
Realistic changes that do you think you can provide single parents, married parents, any kind of parent to just simply afford children in today's world?
You never heard of Ivanka, right? Ivanka. My daughter drove me crazy on this. She said, Dad, we have to do tax credits for women, for the child tax credits. She was driving me crazy. Then I did it, and I got it just about done. Dad, you've got to double it up. We're going to readjust things so that it's fair to everybody.
God, that's a creepy little.
Good evening, and thank you
for
joining
God.
us.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay, so let's take a look at this.
The former president took part in 2 televised town halls that both aired Wednesday, one on Fox News and another on Univision. During the Fox News town hall, which included an all-female audience, Trump spoke on the topic of in vitro fertilization, or IVF, which Harris later reacted to.
IVF, you had mentioned before.
Right,
IVF.
let's get this question because I believe that's what this is about.
Oh, I want to talk about IVF. I'm the father.
You don't hear that every day.
I'm the father of IVF. I got a call from Katie Britt, a young, just a fantastically attractive person from Alabama. She's a.
I forgot about this. See, this is the thing. This is the thing. If you just look at this stuff through one pass, if you just look at it from one source, you'll miss out on stuff like that. This is bizarre. He's mentioning the attractiveness of the person.
You don't hear that every day.
I'm the father of IVF. I got a call from Katie Britt, a young, just a fantastically attractive person from Alabama. She's a senator. And I said, explain IVF very quickly. And within about 2 minutes, I understood it. I said, no. We're totally in favor of IVF.
I found it to be quite bizarre. Actually, he called himself the father of
of IVF. And if what he meant is taking responsibility, well, then yeah, he should take responsibility for the fact that 1 in 3 women in America lives in a Trump abortion ban state.
Voters in some states have already cast their ballot. One day after Georgia broke a state record for early voting turnout, a judge struck down controversial new rules, including one that would have required the hand counting of ballots on Election Day.
Okay, so now that's one shenanigan the Republicans were trying to pull to slow down the election counting, right? That got blocked by a judge. We've got early voting. Now, I haven't covered this, but apparently the Georgia early voting is setting a record. Which is very good because the early voters are going to be, there's, if you're a Harris supporter, you're more likely to vote early. When early voting started, Trump was against it. He, taught his, faithful to distrust it. He's trying to go back on that now and encourage people to early vote. But in general, like, more people voting early is a good sign for Kamala Harris. Now, with Georgia, I want you to understand, right? Pennsylvania, think of it as the linchpin, right? Pennsylvania is the linchpin, right? Kamala's base strategy, in other words, the most conservative, path to victory for her is to win Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania is kind of the linchpin because it's the biggest of those states, and it is, it usually favors her by 1 or 2. But that's within the margin of error. So, that's her basic plan. Now, if we take something like Georgia, Georgia is expected to go to Trump, right? Georgia normally is expected to go to the Republicans. What happened in 2020 was a little bit of an aberration. But were Kamala to win Georgia, that would take some pressure off of her as far as having to win every single one of the blue wall states, right? So, if Georgia goes blue, that's a very good sign. That's a very good sign. And this early voting is pointing in that direction.
The judge also blocked a rule that included ambiguous language requiring officials to conduct reasonable inquiries before certifying election results. CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins us now from what looks like a beautiful, crisp fall day in Milwaukee. Ed, how is Trump's
God, I hate news.
Campaign explaining those comments about IVF?
Yeah, these were the comments he made yesterday, Lindsay, in that Fox News town hall that aired today, where he suggested he was the father of IVF. They basically are laughing it off, saying it was a joke and that the press should get a sense of humor. The issue is this remains a pretty sensitive and important topic to many voters, including the voters, many of them he was trying to
laugh it off, they say.
Reach with this town hall, women voters. We've seen polling. We've talked to them across the country, many of whom say they're concerned about this. This was his opportunity to address the issue, and what he suggested was that states over time will probably loosen those more severe restrictions on access to abortion services, believing that some states have gone too far.
But for some people, chat, it's already too late. Let's take a look at something else that Trump said here that the mainstream media seems to have dropped the ball on, but this was in that town hall. Let's check this out, right? Kamala headquarters caught it.
Amber Thurman's family have come out on a press call, and they're doing what's called a pre-buttal 2-hour town hall right now.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and I want to
get better ratings, I promise.
Amber Thurman's.
Do you know who Amber Thurman is? Kamala Harris mentioned Amber Thurman. Amber Thurman is the woman who had to go to, I believe it was North Carolina, from Georgia in order to terminate her pregnancy, meaning that she had to also take a car ride back. And during that car ride back, she bled out and died. And he is laughing at her family.
Amber Thurman's family have come out on a press call, and they're doing what's called a pre-buttal 2-hour.
Can you imagine if Kamala was like, Lincoln Riley's family? Oh, can you imagine that? Can you imagine if the Harris Waltz campaign like laughed at the victims of violent immigrants or whatever the hell Trump's trying to sell. Can you imagine if you had some, like, you know, you had the converse thing happen, right? That would be the end of the campaign right there. It would be over. It would be over. But this is just normal. This shit gets sane washed. This shit gets ignored. Her name was Amber Thurman. She lost her life because Donald Trump ended Roe versus Wade.
My daughter Amber made me so proud. She was having complications, and
tonight we are learning more about the death of Amber Thurman.
The death of Amber Thurman was likely preventable if she'd had access to abortion care in her home state of Georgia.
What happened to her was preventable. My daughter is gone because of what Donald Trump did.
For 54 years, they were trying to get Roe v. Wade terminated.
And this is where the Trump administration is telling the media they're taking it too seriously.
I did it, and I'm proud to have done it.
It's nothing good enough to bring her back.
Donald Trump is laughing at her fucking family. We're going to get better ratings. Ha ha ha. They don't have the star power we do.
I've never been a political.
What a sick fuck.
Never. I'm voting for Kamala Harris because she showed me she really cared. I felt her sincerity, and I felt her strength.
We will speak her name, Amber Nicole Thurman.
I felt her compassion. We will never get Amber back, but we can make sure this never happens again.
Goddamn.
Amber Thurman's family have come out on a press.
This is the same clip. Amber Thurman's last words to her mother were, "I promise you'll promise me you'll take care of my son. A 6-year-old boy is now motherless because his mother was denied basic medical care." And but he said what Trump is saying here, right? What Trump is saying in this conversation with Harris Faulkner is that it's okay because those states will eventually relax their restrictions on abortion. After how many people die is the question that he does not answer, and he does not get asked, because we are being gaslit by these supposedly liberal media who are really more interested in being perceived as objective than they are in actually doing real, objective, meaningful journalism in the interest of the American people. And that's the shitty world we live in. All right, chat, that's kind of depressing. Let's see if we've got anything less depressing for you today in our Trump tent. We looked at the Google thing, Crystal and Sagar debate, the enemy within. Let's see if I can find. Oh yeah, so this is from, well,
Former President Donald Trump is responding to calls from the Harris campaign to release his medical records. He responded in a very late-night Truth Social post saying,
so Kamala Harris just went and got a medical exam. This is Trump's response.
quote, "I put out more medical exams than any other president in history and aced 2 cognitive exams."
Aced 2, you don't ace cognitive exams. You pass them or you fail them.
Stated that my cognitive exams were exceptional. So reading a quote here, "I am far healthier."
There's no such thing. It's a basic test to see if you are undergoing cognitive decline or not. It's not a test that also shows you if you are a fucking cognitive giant. That's not what a cognitive exam is for. They're for very old people to determine if these people are so old that their cognitive, faculties are slipping, right? That's what it's for. It doesn't there's not an essay section, right? There's not an AP component to a cognitive exam. You either pass it because you are cognitively not in decline, or you fail it because you are cognitively in decline.
Clinton, Bush, Obama, Biden, but especially Kamala. Just fact-checking here, he has not released more medical exams than any other president in history. He has released relatively little detailed information about his own medical history. But let's continue this conversation with CNN political commentator Shermichael Singleton and Paul Begala. Shermichael, I'll go to you first. Is the former president hiding something here? What's going on?
Look, I don't know if he's hiding anything, but what I do know is that he's falling for the trap. He's falling for the bait. And look, I got to give it to the Harris campaign for baiting the former president. Is exactly what she did in the debate they had several weeks ago, and he fell for it. This election is close. I would advise him, don't waste your time responding to this type of stuff. Focus on the issues. But I will also give credit to the Harris campaign. It's important to know what gets under your opponent's skin, and you're seeing it in real time.
Yeah, Paul, Trump says he's far healthier than Clinton, Bush, Obama, Biden, and Kamala Harris. Your thoughts?
Prove it. Prove it, Donald. Put out your medical records. Look, Thomas Jefferson said, when a person becomes a public official, they become public property. Okay? Our presidents have an obligation, morally.
So they're kind of showing you some evidence that maybe Donald Trump's cognitive aptitude isn't quite what it used to be. I saw we watched a clip from, I don't know, the 2010s recently. And the Donald Trump that you see in that clip is night and day from this one, right? It is.
Prove it, Donald. Put out your medical records. Look, Thomas Jefferson said, when a person becomes a public official, they become public property. Okay? Our presidents have an obligation, morally. They don't have one legally. I wish they did. They have a moral obligation to tell the American people about their health. We've had, in history, presidents hide health crises. I think JFK, for example, had Addison's disease and lied about it. And we needed to know that. So I think this could be tragically serious. The reason, I've done this a long time, the reason politicians don't put something out is because they can't, right? Because they don't want to, because there's something in there they don't want you to see. He won't put out his medical records. And after this episode yesterday, where he stopped answering questions at his own town hall from his own supporters, and then stood there oddly for 39 minutes, swaying to YMCA and other disco. I mean, it was, seriously, think about it.
Yeah,
if your Uncle Donald did that at a school board meeting, you'd have an intervention. You'd call a doctor.
Well, and there were all these questions about Joe Biden's, health and so on, and it led to his departure from the race. And I mean, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So I heard. But let's show some of this rally yesterday.
Why has Biden got to be the goose? Why has Trump got to be the gander?
His rally derailed yesterday, Shermichael, after 2 attendees of the rally needed some medical attention, and then this happened. Let's take a look.
Go and vote. Let me hear that music, please.
Everyone, let's thank President Trump.
Nice and loud. MCA, go ahead. Let's go. Nice and loud.
Here we go, everybody.
So yeah, we watched this yesterday, maybe for a little too long. I wanted to see how this developed.
Look, Jim, I don't know. Look, the president, former president rather, is an unorthodox candidate, to say the least. I think we all know that. I take a lot of Paul's points. I think he has some validity to some of the things that he stated. But again, I think strategically speaking, I'm just looking at this as objectively as I possibly can, the Harris campaign is, I guess, putting forward smart strategy, as I said before, in real time. We're seeing a result. The vice president's argument as of late has been, and even I think a day or two ago, she had a big screen up showcasing some of the former president's previous statements. And she said, listen to what he's saying. Listen to how unhinged he is. You shouldn't vote for this person. And now they're baiting him with the vice president in that interview with Roland Martin by saying, why won't he release his medical records? And then the former president is falling for that. So again, Jim, my point here is it's an effective strategy from the vice president and her campaign, and Trump is falling for it, and he shouldn't. He's playing right into their cards, right into their hands.
But there's something else going on here. And that was supposed to be a town hall where he was going to take questions, and he just stopped taking questions and decided to keep dancing. He wouldn't do 60 minutes. He's not releasing his medical records. Pretty much the only time you see him do an interview these days, it's on Fox, which is basically like, professional wrestling. It's choreographed in advance. I mean, Paul Begala, it does seem as though if you look at what's taking place in the last stage of this campaign, he doesn't want to debate Kamala Harris. The former president is he's not kind. He is hiding. He's hiding from taking serious questions in this final stage of the campaign.
Yeah, look, I'm not a doctor, so I have no idea what's behind it. But I can just tell you as a layman, that boy ain't right. He needs a checkup from the neck up, okay? There's something going on with him. And it's Donald Trump. He's always eccentric. Go look at tape of him 9 years ago. Jim, you covered him every day at the White House. Yeah. He wasn't like this.
No, that's right.
I think the Harris campaign, they've done something really smart here. For the longest time, anytime Democrats talk about Trump, including myself, I was guilty of this, we would scream and yell that he was a dictator and a strongman. That only strengthened him with his supporters. Kamala Harris is pointing out the ugly truth, the sad truth, it's really sad, that he's now just weak and unstable and unhinged. It's not that he's so powerful and strong. It's that poor boy, I'm serious, like he needs a glass of water, he needs a nap. I don't know what's going on.
Well, Jim, if I could just jump in quickly here, I will say this. It may be, and Paul, you and I have talked about
Today,
this
I'm very proud of myself because I've accomplished something that nobody else has been able to accomplish. I was just informed while on the helicopter that our president has finally released a birth certificate. I'd want to look at it, but I hope it's true so that we can get on to much more important matters so the press can stop.
So just so you have a basis for comparison, this is 13 years ago. All right. This is what Trump was like 13 years ago.
Asking me questions.
And he seems like a different guy.
He should have done it a long time ago. Why he didn't do it when the Clintons asked for it, why he didn't do it when everybody else was asking for it, I don't know. But I am really honored, frankly.
So he's able to bullshit his way into like the fact that he's happy that Obama showed his birth certificate. He's still not sure until he examines it himself, but he's like, yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure that we could get on with the business of government. And, you know, like I don't know, he's pivoting from being a fucking wild-eyed birther to trying to be like, well, yeah, no, of course, that's great that Obama's got a birth certificate. I'm glad that the country finally gets to see that. I'm glad that I was part of it, right? He's a lot more with it at this point than he is now.
Part of a strategy from the campaign. Maybe they think, God, if we put the former president out here more, if we put him out before adversarial journalists, at least from their perspective, he may say something that could potentially turn off voters. So maybe we play it smart, put him on Fox, and put him at his rallies. That could be a part of a tactical strategy from the campaign, and it wouldn't be a bad strategy.
And I just want to say, for the folks at home who are saying, oh, well, you know, why are you picking on Donald Trump? When there were questions about Joe Biden, whether he was fit to be the Democratic nominee, we had David Axelrod on. We had David Gergen on. I had Douglas Brinkley on, all questioning whether or not Joe Biden should continue as a Democratic nominee. Right. There really isn't anybody asking this question about Donald Trump. Go ahead. Sorry, Paul.
Well, yeah, the Democrats have a political party. Political parties exist to win. Democrats believed that Biden could not win. I was one of them. Biden stepped aside. The Republicans have now become a cult of personality. Trump is not their strongest candidate. He's the only president since Herbert Hoover who lost the House, the Senate, and the White House in 4 years. That's hard to do. So he's not, believe me, they could have put somebody else up. They'd be up by 10 points right now. People want change. Democrats are in the White House. This should be a Republican election. So, but they've formed this cult of personality, and they will defend the indefensible. Not sure, Michael, you've been very candid about this, but the real MAGA acolytes around him are not doing the country any favors by advancing some guy who's clearly just unhinged and too weak to do the job.
But you know what's so interesting about this, Paul? I thought a lot.
Davy Cliff super chatted $9.99. Never forget he did the birth certificate thing for Hillary.
Wait, he did the birth certificate thing for Hillary? Did that actually start? Ooh, wait, Davy Cliff, you got my mind turning now, right? The little squirrel in the wheel in my head is running now, right? Because, yeah, Trump was a Hillary Clinton backer back in the day. He has even mentioned it in debates against other Republicans that he, you know, far from like his argument against corruption was like, I have corrupted candidates. I have bought candidates on both sides. And he mentions Hillary Clinton. Yeah, he was an active Clinton supporter, both of Bill Clinton and of Hillary Clinton. And yeah, obviously a Obama birth certificate truther, which, you know, depending on, I guess, when I don't know the timetable, but Davy Cliff seems to be suggesting that this birth certificate question stuff started while the primary was still active, which would really feed into the idea that, yeah, he was doing it for Hillary. He started the birther thing in 2008. Well, yeah, so that's the Obama Hillary primary was 2008. But did he start it before the primary ended or after the primary ended? That would be the real question I'd want to ask. But interesting.
A lot about this. The race is tied. And I don't think it's just the Trump voters who have allowed the president to showcase this interesting level of strength that's typically underestimated. And so, you know, looking at this, you're wondering, well, who are the voters out there? Who are those swing voters, those independent voters who are saying, you know what, maybe I don't like the personality, maybe I don't like the traits, but there are other issues that I think he's stronger on. They appear to be supporting him, which is why the vice.
All right, let's look at one more thing. Now, you remember the dance party from yesterday, right? I'm not going to belabor the point because that didn't end up being as interesting of content as I thought it would be. I feel like there's got to be a video out there that like cuts up the Trump dancing to different songs that, like, you know, puts like songs that are not copyright claimable on there over it to just kind of give you a demonstration of Trump's dancing skills. But we're going to look now at one of the musicians whose music was played at the Trump dance party, and that would be Rufus Wainwright.
All right, turn that music up. Turn it up. Great song.
It goes like this.
So you remember this? We got to mute it right now, but this is the song in it's either in Shrek 1 or Shrek 2. I can't honestly remember. It's in one of the Shreks. It's a moody montage kind of moment. And it's called Hallelujah. Jeff Buckley did the most famous version of this song. It's a song by Leonard Cohen, a singer-poet from like the 60s. And this is Rufus Wainwright, who I think covered it for Shrek. His voice was the one that was on the version that was in Shrek. And Trump apparently has got this on his Spotify playlist. So it's that one, hallelujah, hallelujah. You know the song. You know the song. But what Trump didn't know is that this particular this particular artist,
happened. A bizarre scene at Donald Trump's town hall in Pennsylvania last.
He might be a fan of Rufus Wainwright, but Rufus Wainwright, not a fan of him.
It's like a music listening party. And for nearly 40 minutes, the former president bopped and swayed with the audience to 9 different songs. The campaign called it a total love fest. Well, here to discuss for our keynote conversation is singer-songwriter, absolute superstar Rufus Wainwright. Rufus, I'm so honored that you're here.
I never knew what Rufus Wainwright looked like.
Okay. Brian Williams used to anchor this show, and Bruce Springsteen was his #1. You are mine.
Those are some epic mutton chops.
Bruce Springsteen.
Thank you so much. Well,
so when I heard this song last night, I had to, I'm like, this can't possibly be happening. When you found out that your cover of Hallelujah was featured at a Trump event, how did you find out? How did you feel? Like, what happened to you last night?
Yeah, well, I knew that that they were using the song occasionally, sort of at the end of rallies, and actually the Cohen family were getting in touch with them and telling them to stop. So it had sort of happened, but I knew that something was different when I got messages from all over the world last night, from Germany and England and stuff, pointing to this footage. And originally I thought, oh yeah, I heard they do this sometimes. But then when I watched it and I realized what it was happening, I was completely dumbfounded, horrified, but also like dumbfounded.
Yeah.
By what was happening, because it was just so bizarre and so like nothing I'd ever seen before in my life. So.
But this specific song, Hallelujah, it's obviously not an original, it's a cover.
Yeah.
So you must have chosen this song when you recorded it for personal reasons. It has to have deep meaning. That song has lots of meaning for so many of us.
Yeah.
So the fact that that particular song was played,
I must admit to having learned this song on guitar at one point.
I've sung Hallelujah for many, many years, and it is turning out to be one of the greatest songs ever written about peace and acceptance and about the truth, and it has a very spiritual meaning. And yeah, for him to use it was blasphemous in many ways. But it also, there were moments when I did also see, because the song is so beautiful and it brings out a kind of humanity, I did see a broken man up there who needs help and who is expressing some kind of yearning maybe for redemption or something. Like it did, because they did the whole thing.
Yeah, why would he choose that song?
So they turned it into kind of a prayer, and I hope it's a prayer for good and for a better world, which they might not be aware of.
That is a beautiful sentiment, but you were angry.
Yes, I was.
When
very
you
angry.
put out a statement today, you blasted his campaign.
Yes.
Tell us about that, and have you heard from them?
Not yet. No, I haven't heard. I'm not. I don't really want to hear.
Do you want to hear from him? Yeah.
Myself, because it all kind of scares me a bit. But yes, no, it was very upsetting. But on the other hand, my dad, always the practical guy, Loudon.
His dad is Loudon Wainwright III, a very famous singer-songwriter.
Well, now you really made it.
You crossed over.
Yeah. Now you made it, and it's good for stage banter. So I can also bring it up as a kind of comical thing, because it is also pretty ridiculous.
But more than that, your music is meant to connect people. Your music is meant to bring people together, to inspire people.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a positive that people who are nothing like you, who don't normally...
What are you talking about? There's nothing positive about this, no.
What is your message to the country while we're in this completely divided moment?
Yeah, well, I've sung Hallelujah all over the world, and in America I've sung it to both Republicans and Democrats. It always seems to even the playing field a little bit. So once again, trying to look on the positive. If this is a moment when we can all just stop and, I don't know, try to come together in a certain way. I know it seems ridiculous at this point with how divided we've become. I'm happy to be part of that solution. That being said, if this also turns out to be one of the craziest moments that people can refer to and look at Trump and really see how insane he is and this whole situation is, and it helps bring him down, I would be really happy to be a part of that.
Awesome. Okay, so yeah, Rufus Wainwright, amazing singer-songwriter in his much like his father, much like his famous father. All right, so we've got I think we're good on what I think we're good on the political stuff. We're gonna move on for a second here to the Asmongold content. I'm trying to stay on track here, chat. I'm trying to stay on track. So I want to show you, before we get into Destiny's take on Asmongold, I want to show you Asmongold's take on Asmongold. We're going to do that, and then we're going to take a look at one of the founding members of Asmongold's stream team, OTK. I think it's more than a stream team. I think it's like a company or something like that, right? But yeah, there's various founders of it. Asmongold is one of the founders, maybe even the primary one, but there's other people. And other people that were probably somewhat hurt by Asmongold's words when he spoke out against the Palestinians suffering and dying in Gaza, as if they needed another punch from a. Anyway, let's take a look. This is Asmongold.
Hey guys,
he's done a little reflection. I think we showed his apology, right? He did apologize on Twitter, but a lot of people felt like it did not sound like, it did not ring like a real apology. It didn't sound real. It didn't sound like he was serious, and it was very hasty. It was very hasty. It was like, oh yeah, I guess I was wrong. Sorry about that, guys. I'll try to do better, right? So, he's released a more thought out statement, a more prepared video from his man cave. He's gonna give his thoughts. I'm gonna take a pee while this starts, but I will be right back.
I wanted to talk to you all about what my plan was for getting suspended on Twitch, and also what my plans are going forward. I'm going to try and structure this video into two parts, where the first part is going to be me talking about the Twitch suspension, second part is going to be talking about myself. And the first thing I want to start off with is something that I know it might sound a little bit insincere because of how ridiculous this is, but I really mean it, and if you listen to the whole video, I hope you can see why. Everybody who's come and spoken out and talked to me and said stuff about me, aside from the, oh, you should kill yourself or something like that, I want to say that I really appreciate you. And I think this has been something that's a long time coming. And I actually think that...
Be right back.
Not only I deserved, but it's also something that I needed. And I want to talk about what the reason for that is, but I want to start off and just make sure that that's actually very clear. So a couple of days ago, I made some comments about Palestine and also about Hamas and, some just general, basically opinions that were trivializing the genocide that's happening there. And I don't really want to mince words or try to oh, I wasn't justifying or, promoting it. I said something about it that was disgusting. I said that I didn't care about innocent people getting killed by another force, by anything. And I think that that's a horrible, disgusting, mean-spirited thing to say. And I don't necessarily think that it was really racist, really, but when I'm using language like Palestinians or like the people there, rather than what my real language was, I've always been very outspoken and very against religious extremism, and I still am. I think that any religion and any way of thinking that's going to cause you to put other people in kind of positions below you as gay people, women, people with disabilities, anything like that, I think that that's a really bad position to have, and I really don't like that. And I think that my problem and my fault here was that I was making a criticism of religious extremism, and I made no effort. And I feel like almost, I've rewatched the clip, right, or a number of the clips, and it's like I've almost made an effort not to draw a distinction between the two things. I think that a lot of us here can easily say that we're against religious extremism, and I am. But whenever I categorize everybody in the area as this, group, then I'm the asshole. And I was the asshole. I had a lot of you guys tell me that. And it's taken me, this is what's so crazy about it, is that I think this has been going on now for 2 years. I think that I've been slowly devolving into the most mean-spirited, I don't really even know what the word is for it. Just the most mean-spirited, rude, nasty, just callous, psychopathic version of myself. I think that I've been devolving into this. And a lot of my friends have told me this. My dad has told me this. He said, you've got to chill out. You've got to calm down. I've been like, oh, that old man doesn't know what he's talking about. And I've finally had some level of accountability for that. And thank God. I look back at some of the things that I've said and done over the past 2 years, and I don't think that I've been wrong about everything, obviously, right? But there have been ways that I've communicated and ways that I've acted that are indefensible. And I think looking back on it, it's just disgusting. And it's something that when you get lost in the sauce and you get fixated around like listening and reading feedback and, just getting hyper fixated, this is like your entire life, you lose a perspective on reality and you lose a perspective on the world. And I think that perspective was brought into perspective yesterday and the day before when I was making comments like,
all right, back.
I feel so stupid. It's crazy. So I'm getting all these people making negative comments toward me. Everybody is telling me like, oh, go kill yourself. I hate you. Everything like this. Do you know who reached out to me? And they wanted to talk and have a conversation and see if I was okay. It's people that were Islamic and people that had fucking family in Palestine. And how humiliating is that? How absolutely humiliating is that? And these were the people I was trying to say were bad. And I feel like such a fucking stupid asshole. I really do. I've always been I guess like I've always been kind of like an atheist. And even as a young kid, I was raised Roman Catholic and I was always very defiant towards it. And I've always had a negative opinion of religion, and I've also had a negative opinion of religious cultures. And I think that opinion is definitely shaped by the media that I've created, and the media I've created for myself, and then also just the media that exists, the media that I've chosen to seek out as well. And I think that media has allowed me to have certain predispositions and certain biases that the truth is that don't have any sort of relation to what my own real life has been experienced, or what my own real life experience has been, excuse me. And so I've been spending a lot of time talking to those people, and I've seen people like fans of mine, like I had viewers messaging me on Discord, like, why are you saying this? Like, do you want to talk? Do you want to, like, I'm willing to talk to you, and like, let's try to work this out, right? We love you. And I scrolled up on their messages, and these are people that messaged me in like 2016, 2017, 2018, like, I love your content, I love your stream, I love you, right? And now they get to hear this from me, and I just feel like such a stupid, belligerent fucking asshole. I really do, and I'm sorry. I really am.
All right, so yeah, two options, right? One option, he's seen the light. He had his own hallelujah moment a la Jeff Buckley, and he's decided to make a change, right? That's what he wants us to believe. A lot of people not buying it, though. A lot of people are thinking that this is him trying to get ahead of the pressure that people are putting on both Twitch to do like a more permanent ban on him, and OTK to maybe cut ties with him as well. Now, I don't know how that would work. As from my understanding, he's a pretty integral member of OTK, so that might not even be a possibility. But for whatever reason, he wants a clean slate. He's going for a clean slate here. I'm kind of curious what his cleaning the room would be the most viewed stream. Dude apologized harder than Dr. Disrespect, and I don't even know what he did. Yeah, a lot of, like, I got a lot of Asmongold people in my comments from the coverage I've done, and they like, even if he disagrees with, so here's the deal. Asmongold is saying that he disagrees with his own take, right? His take, he's saying my take was bullshit. Now, I've got people from his community in my comments being like, what did Asmongold even do bad? He was just saying the truth. How could you be mad at him for saying the truth, right? So even if he's moving past these statements, a lot of people in his community, a lot of his supporters, we're going to see one of those later, that being Destiny, are not giving any ground. They do not see a problem with what he said.
I think that it's extremely fair to criticize religious extremism, and I think that it's extremely unfair to categorize everybody in part of that group as religious extremists. I think it is, and I'm really sorry for that. I've just been a fucking dick, and it's weird because yesterday I woke up and I didn't know if I was going to get suspended or not, and I